Hello and welcome to the Score Boord Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com, discount code 80. That's Wayne Corbett. Please remember to subscribe to the Score Boord Podcast and to all the Jets X Factor podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, wherever else. Okay. Thank you very much to anyone who joined. I know we just started. We're going to have a very special guest on today, but we're going to wait a few minutes. So now I'll try to just take a look at some of the comments to start. I know Rusty Spooner was here early. I don't know if he's actually here now, but we'll talk about this. He said, Tippmann will be fine. Y'all got to chillax, LOL. He's learning Rodgers' brain right now, and that ain't easy. He was the best rookie center last year and dealt with multiple quarterbacks. This is camp/practice. Well, we'll talk about that more with Dom. I'll get back to that. But then we have Fashion, who is doing awesome, and not really hearing about him is the best. The kid is Mr. Consistency, and I've seen it for years with him playing against the Ohio State Buckeyes. I hated him, and that's a compliment. Yeah, I'm sure we'll discuss Fashion too. There was some negative from Fashion yesterday from the scrimmage, but we'll see what happens with that. He said with Tippmann also, he's going against our D-line battling Q and Kinlaw. And our other monsters. He'll be fine. It'll make him better this season. Let's go Jets. Okay, again, we're going to talk about Kinlaw. And there's what I wrote in the headline and what we're actually going to talk about. Okay, so sit tight. Tom, he said, hey to Dom. Dom will be with us soon. But thank you so much for joining. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves over here. So I guess we'll just talk a little bit about yesterday's scrimmage. I mean, again, the snap over Rodgers' head was obviously a big deal. Seems like, again, the cornerbacks weren't there. Sauce wasn't there. You had some other players not there. Obviously, Mike Williams not being out there hurts a lot on the offense because it kind of shows you how important Mike Williams is for their offense because things are not sorry, lost my train of thought. Yeah, things are not as good in training camp. Okay, obviously they also didn't have Morgan Moses there for part of the time, but things are not there during training camp. I mean, again, like things are not as smooth during training camp as they could have otherwise been, and that part of that is because again, you have Garrett Wilson, you don't have Mike Williams yet, so you're playing with Allen Lazard and a bunch of again, even Gibson's out now, so you're playing with Garrett Wilson, Lazard outside in the slot. You're playing with Malik Taylor in the slot against the Jets defensive back room. That's not going to cut it. And so, you wonder when Williams can get on the field. It seems like the Jets might be slow playing him a bit because, again, he got injured in week 3 when Brees got injured in week 7. And Brees only had a couple of weeks of practice before the regular season last year. They say that Williams is on the similar timeline, but it's weird because he should be a month ahead of where Brees was, unless he had a surgery late. But I think Brees also had a surgery later, so I don't know. That's a little interesting. It seems like the offensive defense are going back and forth. And when you're talking about training camp, you always have this question of who do you want to do well? Because obviously, if the offense does well, then you start getting worried about the defense. Defense does well, you start getting worried about the offense. Personally, at least this offseason, I just want to see the Jets offense dominate. I'm not worried about their defense. I mean, I'm kind of worried about their interior, defensive line, but I'm not too worried. I mean, Quinnen is Quinnen. I'm worried about the run defense from some of the, beyond Quinnen, but you're not really going to see that in training camp anyways. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I want to see Rodgers go out there and throw a bunch of touchdowns to Garrett Wilson, see him throw to Brees Hall, and everyone be great. So Connor, hey, and now we have Dom. We're going to add him. Hi, Dom. Thanks so much for joining.
Hey, Rivka. Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late, man.
Yeah, sure. Great.
Traffic is what it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I see Joe is here. Yeah, Joe, I saw your messages. We'll talk about them afterward. But Dom, so I put in the title of the thing, what on earth is up with Joe Tippmann? And we actually talked about this the last time you were on with me about Joe Tippmann snapping, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You said at the time it's a Wisconsin issue, right? They just haven't.
So he was, they ran a couple different offenses in Wisconsin, and the majority of his time was spent with the quarterback under center, I believe. And I got to pull up my draft notes from from Tippmann's draft year, but I believe it was like a high percentage, like 88% of the snaps were taken under center. Now, I think at this level, these elite level athletes, if you're a center, you should be able to snap the ball, so on and so forth, which I think it's fine, and again, this is my opinion. This is not like green goggles or super optimism. Like, I kind of believe a little bit in what Robert Saleh said in his press conference, that, they're trying to make sure that he works on certain other things and techniques to keep him pure and to really maximize his athleticism. So maybe that's kind of hindering a little bit of what he's doing with the snapping. But I said it, like I said, I said it from the get-go. I said it from when I, watched his film in Wisconsin. I said it definitely after last year. Again, not I'm not the only one that said it. I think that, I thought Tippmann was a really, really good guard. And maybe he should have just been, kept at guard. Do I see it as a problem? No, I'm not going to say it's a problem. I think it's something that's going to fix itself and work itself out. I'm not necessarily all that concerned for the long-term thing. It'll get fixed when it gets fixed. And if it doesn't, then they're going to have to worry about it. But, internally, I don't know what the fix is right now, because there's no other, center worth starting on this roster. I mean, Wes Schweitzer is, below average, and I think that's being kind. So,
I mean, and not only is he below average, but his snaps last training camp were worse than Tippmann's. I mean, and last year in the preseason, I mean, they were all over the place. I remember thinking, I'm like, they can't play this guy at center because he can't snap the ball.
Yeah, and I have a buddy of mine from the draft world I got to know very, very well, who happens to be a Washington Commanders fan. And I remember when we signed him, I said, hey, give me the lowdown. And he said, adequate swing guard. You don't want him playing center. And in essence, that's what Schweitzer's been, I guess, right? Adequate swing guard when having to come in, but we don't want to see him at center. And I don't think we are going to have to. Again, I might be, I think us in Jets fans, in the midst of all this, hoopla and chaos and holler about camp and excitement and all that stuff, there's going to be something that is thrown in our faces 100 different ways during the spring camp. Like I said, it's an issue. I don't think it's the be all end all issue. It'll work itself out when it does. And listen, that's where it stands with the snapping. I don't think that there's another ulterior move. You're not going to move him to guard right now, especially not since you brought in John Simpson, and obviously you don't want to mess with AVT. I mean, I like that interior right now. Is it top 3 in the league? No, but I think it's got the basis of what we're trying to do, and that's to really be aggressive and smack some people in the nose and get into really forceful, dominant, power style run game. And I think those 3 guys together are a big piece of the cog that makes that power game go wild.
Yeah, I mean, and Tippmann played. I mean, his stats were better at guard, so that we had this discussion about whether they should keep him at guard. But it's not like he played poorly at center. He was probably about an average-ish player last year. And for a rookie, I mean, you saw what happened to John Michael Schmitz with the Giants. I mean, comparing that, Tippmann was like a superstar. Yeah.
That's the truth, and it's funny too, man. I feel bad. I think JMS has been out of camp or not practicing up to full speed because he's dealing with yet another injury, man. I feel bad. But yeah, listen, I'm not necessarily all that concerned. Is it annoying? Yeah, it's annoying as hell, but if it wasn't Tippmann's bad snaps, what we'd be harping on right now? We'd be harping on, oh my God, did you see DJ Reed got blown up or got toasted by this guy? Or did you see, CJ Mosley got, toasted by, by Conklin? Or did you see, oh my God, Max Mitchell got, eaten alive by, Eric Watts or something like that. So whatever it is that, is taking the something else would take our distraction or take our attention, I should say.
I mean, like, I love some of these headlines talking about Tariq Cohen retiring as if that was like a disaster that put a hole in the Jets' plans and everything. Like, okay, it looked like he was going to make the team. It was somewhat surprising that he retired, but like, who cares?
Yeah, no, and listen, I'll say this about that piece, Rivka, and this is my opinion for what it's worth. If you look at the running backs that they brought in for a workout at the end of the week, 2 days ago, I guess it was Friday. They brought in Eno Benjamin. They brought in Keyshawn Vaughn. Somebody else, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But again, guys who aren't going to really affect the game very much from the backfield, but guys who will affect the game from a special team area, especially with this new kickoff rule. So to me, it seems like the Jets were kind of caught off guard. And again, is it the be all end all that Tariq Cohen retired? No. But it's clear to me, I think, that they want running backs back there. They think that this new kickoff rule is going to be very transcendent to have two guys who can carry the ball or can run the ball in space, expect a lot of, trickery or plan design, whether it's pulls, traps, whatever. They want running backs that can run the ball. I mean, Isaiah Davis has been getting the bulk of them. Malachi Corley, who is a converted running back, has been getting some as well. So that the fact that they're bringing in these guys to me seems like, they might have had an idea if Cohen made it that, what his role was going to be. It wasn't going to be in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And since we talked about the kick return, I was going to ask you about this later, but we'll talk about that. It's interesting you mentioned the running back aspect, right? Because what we saw kind of, in the Hall of Fame game made it seem like there are going to be different approaches to this. Some teams are going to look for just that straight speedster who can, once he gets through the first level, is gone. And then what you're saying, the Jets' approach is more like, no, we want someone who has good vision, who is and can take on contact, a bruiser. And that kind of is what Isaiah Davis is. So
exactly.
Do you think that makes sense, like what they're doing, like how Davis would be the kick returner?
He'll be back there. I mean, barring any injury or any unforeseen signing between now and whatever, I guarantee you when we step into the first preseason game in Washington that he'll be back there. But yeah, it makes sense, especially if your play is designed. If you have Isaiah Davis, since we're talking about him, we'll use him as an example. If you have him as your right receiver, he catches the ball within that zone at the 5-yard line on the right side, and you pull, you have offensive line, maybe some offensive linemen and some linebackers, some athletes there that can, put together a double team block, and you pull someone else. I mean, they're, like you said, the running backs are going to understand how to, read off a block or have the vision to know when to cut back on a trap or pull blockers, so on and so forth. There's going to be a lot of that. I think that's going to be the Jets. We're not going to see in preseason. You're going to see the guys catch and run straight, but I think there's going to be a lot more designed plays. Again, if the NFL follows what the UFL did, there's tons of it. There was tons of it in the UFL games. A lot of double teams, a lot of designed runs and heavy set blocks on one side or the other or in the middle. You know what I mean? So it makes sense to have a running back. It also makes sense, like you said, to have a burner. And listen, if they find a crease, you get through 10 guys, you only have a kicker to get by. You know what I mean? So it should be, there's a couple different interesting ways to go about it, but the Jets definitely want people who can carry the ball and use their vision, carry the ball and be effective in space. That's the way I see it right now.
Yeah, no. So the one burner that they did have on the roster was Tyler Harrell.
Yeah,
the guy from Miami. Round 429 at his pro day. So it was interesting. If I was wondering if they wanted to kind of one burner, one back style,
and maybe they're gonna have different ideas or different aspects depending on the time, the point of the game or the score or so on and so forth. Maybe they're going to have different packages, because I think Codrington, the undrafted free agent cornerback, was also taking some. So I think they're maybe they're just trying to see what works best or what combination works best, if it's 1-and-1 or if it's something different in the sense of, this time we're going to run a set play. So we want our running backs here, or this one, we're just going to, we need to make something happen. We're going to put some speed on the field. All is still yet to be figured out and determined, I think, in regards to how every NFL team is going to really kind of handle this new kickoff rule. Hey, they might just kick it, through the end zone and just take it, listen, you got 10 guys on there that, like you said, if one guy misses and there's a crease, there's only the kicker left to cover. So the teams might just kick it through the end zone and give it to him on the 30 or whatever it is, 30, 35, and just say, all right, we like our defense, beat us.
So it's interesting because I wrote an article about that about a few weeks ago, and I was saying how, yes, I understand the differences between the 25 and the 30, but the truth is that I looked at some of the statistics and I was like, the risk of having a return for a touchdown might be worse than let's say just starting at the 30. Now, what we saw in the Hall of Fame game seems to indicate that maybe not. Like the ball, yes, there is that risk of if they get past the first level of defense. On the other hand, is that going to happen more often, or are we going to see more often than not? Are we just going to see guys returning out to 26, 27, which is what we saw a lot the Hall of Fame game is obviously the Hall of Fame game, but still we didn't see and it was also on that horrible, field
horrible turf. With rain, with tons of rain there. So
So
now listen,
I
think you're going to, I think it's going to, it's going to be, listen, just like anything is in preseason, Rivka, this as much as anyone, everything is straight vanilla, and maybe a team's mindset is like, well, I don't care about the new kickoff rules. We're just going to kick it out of the end zone and give it to you on the 30, but let's go through. That's the first time we're doing it, the first game. Let's get some live reps versus whatever, because I don't know. I don't really think that the NFL teams care so much about winning or losing their preseason games more so than getting the viable reps, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you saw someone take the ball out of the end zone. That's not happening in the regular season. They're taking a knee. So they probably, chances are the special teams coach just said, take it out for no matter where it is, because we want to see how our blocking works. We want to see how the team reacts, things like that. No, absolutely. But it was interesting to see how it lined up there, where most of the returns were to like the 26.
Yeah.
So, I guess that would be a nod towards maybe kicking it off between the 1 and the 5 as opposed to kicking it out of the end zone. But the truth is, the last 2 seasons, the Jets defense average starting field position, like for the opponent, was like the 29.4 and the 29.6 or something like that. So it's not really that different from what the Jets have dealt with to begin with.
No, but it's you're right. But it's, I think, a little bit more advantageous because just say they're kicking out of the end zone and taking it to 30 every time. One thing's not going to happen is the risk of a return for a touchdown. You know what I mean? So to me, that makes the most sense. If you got a big lead, if you're confident in something like that, or there's not a lot of time left to go and you don't want to risk, you're down 6 and you don't want to risk something, that just kick it out of the end zone. Okay, you got to go 70 yards instead of maybe finding a crease and somebody missing a tackle and you're going 70 for a touchdown. You got to drive 70 for, on us now on our defense. So,
yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it progresses. Like you might even see teams switch their strategy as the season goes on or as a game goes on, like different, kind of what you're saying, different times of the game. You could even say, as we were talking about, you could see different returners at different times in the game. And that's one of the advantages of having different guys work out to do it. Codrington and Harrell are not making the team unless they win a returner spot. But like having Braylon Allen do it, even if he's not going to be one of the returners during the season, it's good to have that experience, having more guys. Now, I see someone mentioned Xavier Gipson. It's actually interesting because I was just looking back at his tape from last year as a kick returner, and I'm not going to give away too much because I just wrote an article that's going to probably be posted in the next couple of days. But my takeaway was there is no way Xavier Gipson should be their kick returner.
I think when we think of Xavier Gipson and returns, everyone defaults to week 1 in Buffalo. I mean, and I'd be lying to you, full disclosure, I don't know the numbers, or I can't pull, with enough sufficient confidence in memory, anything else that kind of wowed me. I also don't, on the same token, I don't really have anything that I was absolutely disgusted with either. Maybe a couple bobbles. I will say, like, every time he got back there for a punt return, like, there was something in me that just puckered up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I was a little bit nervous he's going to catch this thing. And that was all season long. But I don't know if he was, like I said, I don't know. There's nothing that struck me as a returner outside of that Buffalo game as like, wow, or there's nothing that struck me as like, oh man, this is awful. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm pretty confident, at least for the kicks. I don't know about the punts. The punts are a different animal.
I think Gibson will be the punt return.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that right now for the kicks, we're going to see Malachi Corley and Isaiah Davis get a lot of the run.
Which I think is good. I mean, honestly, both of those guys are bruisers, great tackles, the vision in the open field, kind of things like that. Sure. And you could see them plow through a couple of tackles and get into the open space. Now, Davis is obviously slower than Corley, at least, in terms of 40. But both of them, I mean, look, again, Davis might not break it for a touchdown, but we saw Zonovan Knight have a 52-yard kick return in preseason. He was just as slow as Isaiah Davis.
Even a little slower, if I'm mistaken. If I'm not mistaken,
Davis ran a 4.57. Knight ran a 4.58.
Oh, I thought
I looked it up. I looked it up today. That's why.
Well, I'll believe you. I like I said, I thought Knight was in the 4.6s, but so be it. They're the same. Relatively, like you said, not game-breaking speed, but still fast enough where hey, listen, Isaiah Davis broke one in camp the other day. A good 40, 45 yards where, he didn't look like 4 or 5 speed. Maybe he would have gotten caught from behind, if one of these 4.2 guys was chasing him, but that's still fast enough. Let's call it what it is. It's not, you're not going to break away from everyone with 4.55 speed, but it's still fast enough. You give him enough crease, and I think he can do the rest of it. I happen to be.
Sorry. I know. Just to finish. No, so I was going to say the shame of it is that who would be the Jets' 2 best kick returners? Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall.
Right, right, yeah.
Like open field, like Breece Hall just bruising over people, Garrett Wilson juking everyone out. Like those would be their best kick returners.
Yeah, and our luck is you put him back there, and you get a season-ending like knee that happens on the MetLife turf or something like that. Yeah, no, I was gonna say like the whole Isaiah Davis thing. Like I'm pretty bullish on him. Like I liked him as a prospect. Do I think he's the next coming of Walter Payton? No. But I think he's gonna. I think he can affect the not only the special teams, but I think he can hold his own and get a couple series or 2 here and get his feet wet. I mean, he's a grown man when it comes to pass pro. You know what I mean? I remember talking to him down in Mobile for a little while, and I had him for 5-6 minutes. We were just shooting the breeze during an interview, and I asked him like, "What's your everyone likes to make 80-yard touchdowns and be the hero." I said, give me something. Tell me something else that like does it for you. That's like why you play football. He's like, man. He's like, I love decleating, blitzing linebackers and edges that come off. He's like, there's something to it. He's like, maybe it's my ego or whatnot. He's like, but when you just, kind of just sit back and take them right off their feet, he's like, there's nothing better. We talked about pass protection for a while, and because the Senior Bowl, he went there, from a small school, and no one knew him, and he was the offense there. But one of the first things he said is he's like, I got to show all these 32 NFL teams that I am a complete back. He's like, they didn't ask me. It's not that I can't catch the ball. They didn't ask me to do it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to come here and show my receiving skills. I want to show them that, I got the head to understand the offenses. I'm going to show them that I'm not going to be, a detriment on 3rd downs and pass protection. Among says, I'm going to be a physical, I'm a physical bruising, like fall forward kind of running back. And I was like, yeah, that's my kind of guy.
He's like the anti-Dalvin Cook, right? Cook
yeah. Amen. Amen.
Lazy, it's not that Cook couldn't pass protect, it's that he wouldn't. So it's like the guy who looks forward to it.
Yeah.
But since you're talking about Isaiah Davis, I was going to ask you, how do you think they're going to divide the reps in the backfield? Because obviously you have Breece, who's the bell cow. You have Braylon Allen, who, Saleh actually praised both running backs pass protection. He said they're ahead of the game for rookies. Yeah. But ultimately, having taken running backs in back-to-back rounds, like, is Davis even going to get enough opportunity in the run game?
Probably not. At least not early on, I would assume. Maybe if we are lucky enough to walk into a enter in the fourth quarter and we're up 40-14 or something like that, and you kind of pull the starter kind of thing. But listen, there's as good of a chance. There's still a remote chance that Isaiah Davis, something even though I don't see it because I think he's going to be the one of the main kick returners, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was inactive on some games, depending on the personnel that they have. Maybe they fall in love with Izzy Benakanda, who knows? And they want to keep him active for the speed aspect that on that. I don't think that's going to be the case, but listen, I could see him spelling. Brees is going to get the lion's share. I think Braylon Allen's going to get some, he's going to get some run. If I had to say, man, if he got, 3 touches, 5 touches, outside of special teams, I'd say that's a pretty good start for a kid like that. Probably less than 5% of the offensive snaps to start with, depending on what happens and how he develops and how he keeps going, probably, maybe get a little more. But, I mean, it's going to be Brees' show. And when he needs I'd say for every 4 series, you're going to probably see 3 Brees and 1 Braylon Allen. I probably think it's like a 75-25 split. And of that 25, maybe some of those go to Isaiah. Maybe they have certain packages and certain packages where they want Isaiah Davis in there. I know that they were working a lot of stuff with Isaiah Davis almost up at, and again, this is just a preseason formation, but you saw a little stuff with him, up at the wing and coming back into the backfield and pass sets and so on and so forth, or staying up in the wing and going out and, and being one of the receivers out in the backfield. So maybe they have packages for him like that, but outside of that, I don't probably see 70% Brees, 25%, 25% Braylon Allen, maybe even a little less, maybe 75-20, and then 5% whoever. Empty backfield or yeah.
And that's the way I see it. And look, I love Isaiah Davis. I'm like a big Isaiah Davis fan.
Yeah.
I love running backs who get you the 4 or 5 yards when you need them. Like, as much as I love Brees' home run hitting ability, and I do, and obviously I think Brees is great. I think he might be the best back in the NFL this season. But I love having that guy who can just get you the tough yards when you need them. But at the same time, the only issue I had with Douglas taking running backs in back-to-back rounds is I just felt like that second running back was not going to play. So I understand the thought process, but I just felt like, couldn't you have gotten like another receiver or something like that at that point?
Well, that's 2 different things there. I agree with you. If you wanted to take listen, taking 2 running backs kind of makes sense to what you said, Rivka, unless one of them you have a vision for with this new kickoff return thing, right? And maybe that's it. Maybe they just said, hey, listen, this kid's young and he's gonna be in here and learn. He won't hurt us in third downs or whatnot, and he's gonna come in right off the bat and help us in specials. You know what I mean? And look at the stable of running backs they have there. Brees is 23. Braylon Allen's 20. Isaiah Davis is 23. Izzy Benakanda is 23. They're young. If all 4 of them are kept and active, like, they're young. I know Joe Douglas takes a running back every year, but next year could be one year where he doesn't have to. Like, he's really loaded and put this kind of stable together. Now, to that point of taking 2 running backs in the draft, look at the 2 types of running backs went on draft. To me, at some point along the line, they kind of just said, all right, listen, we got to change. We got to do something. Maybe it's a Hackett thing. Like, let's get the offense last year kind of made everyone vomit, even, I'm sure, at one Jets drive. And they're switching to the power, a little, smash mouth power football. So why not bring in 2 guys that can really effectuate that type of, style of game? Braylon Allen, when Wisconsin ran primarily a power gap scheme, ran for 1,400 yards as an 18-year-old, and then they moved to an outside zone, and he wasn't as effective. A guy that's like that, 235 pounds, you want him getting downhill as fast as he can. Well, Isaiah Davis, the same thing, right? Isaiah Davis and is, skill set wise, schematically, very similar to what you have in Braylon Allen. So you brought in 2 running backs to learn and that really fit the kind of focus that you want this offense, this running game to be. That makes sense to me, especially if one of them is going to help you on specials. But I digress because I think you are absolutely right. If there was any year to take multiple, shots at the dartboard at the wide receiver position, it was this one. It's as deep as a wide receiver classes as they've had in a long, long time. And not to say I don't like Corley. I do. He wasn't my favorite. He wasn't my favorite prospect. He wasn't my favorite. He wasn't my favorite. Just really hard. He was a really hard evaluation because everything at Western Kentucky was so wonky. But I like the player and I like the physicality. Again, fits in that mold. You still didn't. To me, you still could have, or you still should have taken another shot at somebody to come push like the Malik Taylors and the Jason Brownlees of the world, and you would have gotten somebody.
When Malik Washington went in the 6th round, I think something like that. I was like, why did you get that guy? Why did you let Miami get him?
Yeah, and
like I love Malik Washington. I was a big fan of him. So
he was.
he was
good.
Once you took Corley, it was a little like, okay, Corley's going to play in the slot. It was a little bit much, but still, I was like, as you said, like, okay, if you're going to have Malik Taylor there, why not take Malik Washington? He's a much better shot.
Yeah, well, even if it wasn't Washington, even if it was, whomever, I'll use the name just because it's a name that everyone's familiar with. But Jerry Rice's kid went in the 7th round to Brendan Rice. He went in the 7th round. Now, there's probably a reason he went in the 7th round. Maybe he's not maybe he's got a very limited athletic ceiling and so on and so forth. But you're telling me a guy like that couldn't push Brownlee in camp or definitely push Irv Charles? I mean, to me, Irv Charles still big body. I know that everyone loves what he does in specials, but he offers you absolutely nothing as a wide receiver. And we still didn't know, even though, there's been some sort of semi-resurgence of Alan Lazard with Aaron Rodgers behind camp, but we still didn't know what we were getting with him. We still have Mike Williams, who hasn't practiced. So you're telling me you couldn't bring in another viable X or a field stretcher or something like that couldn't have opened up the underneath for Tyler Conklin and Breece Hall to operate in space? Come on, man.
Yeah, so that was my take. And again, this is not a knock on Isaiah Davis at all. Like, I'm a huge Isaiah Davis fan. Like, I've written articles about how much I love Isaiah Davis. So it's not a knock on Isaiah Davis at all. It's more just use of resources kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I get it.
I made the same point about Will McDonald. I love Will McDonald as a player. I think he's going to be a good one. But I just thought that at taking him at 15 was a bad use of resources. I'm like, okay, you lost out on the left tackle. Take a receiver. Like, they needed one, and they didn't take one. And so it was kind of like, again, I think McDonald's going to be a good player. But it's just, and people like always say, oh, you're give McDonald a chance. I'm like, I love McDonald. I love Isaiah Davis. I just thought that there was a better use of resources considering what the Jets had. And I feel like that's what the draft is all about.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think to double down on the whole wide receiver thing, Rivka, you look at the numbers these guys are getting paid now, right? You saw what Tyreek got paid. You see what Justin Jefferson got paid. Now, granted, they're the two best, if not, in the top realm. But the receivers are getting paid. Ayuk's going to get, upwards to 28, 30 million. Michael Pittman just got 25, 26 million. These guys are getting paid. Well, we'll know when we have to pay Garrett. So, having that rookie contract on a wide receiver too would be really, really nice right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that was a big part of my thought.
Yeah. Ooh, you froze on me.
It still is. It's like you keep bringing them in. You kind of just replenish the stable because wide receiver. Oops. You here now?
Yep, I'm here.
You have me?
I got you. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, no, so yeah, okay. So so I feel like wide receivers considering how much they're getting paid, it's considered one of the more important positions in football at this point. Like you have quarterback and then maybe, tackle. Obviously the tackles get paid and the defensive tackles but like receivers right up there and like one of the top 3-4 positions in the sport. And so it's like don't you want to just kind of like the Jets have liked to bring in edge rushers every year, although they didn't this year, but they like to bring in edge rushers. Like, why not just bring in more receivers? But anyways, I think we probably, people could be sick of that. So I wanted to ask you about something else that Nathaniel Hackett said. It combines the first couple of topics we talk about. One thing came from Hackett and one of them came from Rodgers. So Hackett said about Tippmann, he said he never had issues snapping last year. Now, if you turn on the film, he had issues snapping last year. In every game, basically, he had at least one, if not two, bad snaps that went high, wide, something like that. Yeah. Then you had Rodgers, who they asked him about Breece Hall, and one thing he said about Breece Hall is that the scouting report he had gotten on Hall when he first joined the Jets was that he was not an every down back, and now he's become an every down back. Now that is ridiculous to me. If you watch Breece Hall, I mean, yes, coming out of college, was he elite in pass pro? No. But if you've watched him in the NFL, he's been certainly adequate in pass pro. If not, I mean, like I've watched some of his film, he looks fine. And he could do. I mean, we knew he could catch the ball. We knew he's an elite running back. So, what is it with the Jets and scouting their own players? Like, why do they just it's like what Hackett said about Breece last year that he didn't know he could catch until the Giants game. Like, what are they thinking?
Yeah, listen, I'm the farthest thing from a Hackett defender. But I think that statement when he said he didn't know he could catch, I think that kind of got taken a little too crazy and a little out of context. I know what he said, and he said just that, but and maybe this is the realist in me, Rivka. I can't believe for one iota that he didn't know that he could catch. I thought maybe he was like, wow, I didn't know he could catch like that. Like, kind of like that. I don't know, man. He is, I don't know. I don't know about that. Tippmann, listen, there's going to be a time where not everything is going to be perfect, and I don't know, again, off the top of my head, full disclosure, I don't know, and I didn't go back and look and count how many bad snaps he had. I'm assuming you did. How many bad snaps did he have all year?
I counted. I think I put up. Michael Nania put up like a compilation because I sent it to him of like the worst snaps. I didn't actually count it, but there were like at least 2 in every game.
Yeah, I got nothing. I got nothing for that. Like I said, I don't remember. It's not anything that came up as an issue like that. That my mind. And
he had one fumble against Washington where Simeon dropped it because it was high.
Yeah, there was nothing came into my mind that kind of that I correlated to the problems he's having here in camp to the regular season. I knew that it wasn't perfect, and I also know that it's always not going to be perfect. Creed Humphrey had a lot of issues when he transitioned. In the
Super Bowl, it was terrible this past year.
Creed Humphrey had a lot of issues. I mean, he's one of the best centers, if not the best center in the league right now that Jason Kelce retired, and he had a lot of troubles transitioning as well. And he played a lot more snaps from the shotgun at Oklahoma. So I don't know, man. I'm going to hope that I'm going to hang my hat on the hope, or maybe have that false confidence that what Salah's saying is actually means something, and it's not an issue, that he's working on more technique stuff, and this is just a byproduct of that. So we'll see. I don't know.
I mean, fair enough. It's kind of annoying to hear the coaches say something that's so obviously like off the mark about the running backs. Now, we've had a couple of people once said Hall was on a pitch count, but again, Rodgers wasn't saying that he heard about Hall that they're going to ease him in to start the season. He was saying he heard he's not a 3-down back. Now, Taylor Sterling is saying Breece wasn't asked to be and wasn't projected as a 3rd-down back. Don't rewrite history to make the coach look bad, buying into the anti-just media bias. Again, I'm not saying, look, I'm really, the reason I'm saying this is because I'm a huge Breece Hall fan. I think to me, the sky's the limit on him, especially with even adequate blocking. But my point was not that he wasn't asked to be a 3rd-down back. A lot of NFL teams have a different 3rd-down back, but that he couldn't be a 3-down back, that he wasn't a 3-down back. He's as much of a 3-down back as any running back in the NFL.
Yeah, listen, and it's a dying breed. The true workhorse running back is a dying breed. The majority of teams and probably for the betterment of the players themselves, it's more of a committee situation where guy will work two series, and they'll hand a series off to one, then they'll hand a series off to another, or this guy's my early down back, this guy's my third down back, this guy's my when we have empty and we want a fifth receiver in the field, he's the guy that does it. So there's just not many of those true workhorse 3-down backs. I mean, off the top of my head, you think, well, Christian McCaffrey doesn't leave the field. You got Travis Henry, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. Again, off the top of my head, those are the guys that come ahead. Breece Hall's right in that mix as well. Like he probably fits in that workhorse back. Now he was a good receiver in college. Wasn't asked to receive the ball a lot because they did a lot. Brock Purdy did a good job handing it off to him. You know what I mean? So he was a very good receiver coming out of college. I thought that he had the makeup to be a 3-down back. But in this day and age, like that's such a, it's such a, now an uncommon thing that I think people just realize that these guys aren't going to be down there. Maybe he's an early down. This guy's the receiving back or so on and so forth.
Yeah, but Rodgers' point was he said now he's a 3-down back, like something changed from last year to this year. I mean, that doesn't seem to be the case to me.
No, I don't think that was ever the case, to be honest with you. I think they knew exactly what they had in Breece. And they knew it was special, and it was special. But I'm going to pose something to you, Rivka, in Breece Hall. A lot of back and forth with a lot of guys in the know and, friends of mine, so on and so forth. The Jets have an interesting predicament coming up with, the vaulted class of 22 with Breece, JJ, Garrett, and Sauce all coming due for contracts, right? They ain't all getting paid. How do you think it breaks down? Because realistically, although he's probably my favorite Jet right now, the realist in me says that Breece is probably not getting the long-term contract.
So this is the way I see it from those four. I see Sauce definitely gets paid. Not even a question. Garrett Wilson, I'm 95% sure he gets paid, although Rich Cimini kind of pumped the brakes on that. So,
well, I think he's going to be a difficult one. I think he's going to want it. If they struggle again, he's going to want to test the market. But
yeah, well, that's what I said. I said if they stink this year, he's going to ask for a trade because he's too big of a competitor. He wants to win. But assuming that the team is okay, so that meaning if he comes to negotiations after next season and he has a great season, or after this season, after his third year, he has a great year because you want to pay him earlier rather than later because you don't want the market to go up even further. And so I still think Garrett will get paid with the Jets. I think Johnson, maybe not. It depends how he plays this year. Breece, I think no. And it pains me to say it because, again, as you said, Breece Hall is my favorite Jet player to watch. Like, just purely on a down and down out basis, like the things that he can do physically on the field, like, to me are unbelievable. And, I'm just like, he really is my favorite player. But I just think, even if it's not Joe Douglas, just the way the NFL is trending. I mean, again, if the Jets had an offense like the 49ers, and but even the 49ers paying Christian McCaffrey, like I've heard people say he's one of one where he's worth it. I don't know. I think what's going to happen, they tried to trade up to get him in the first round so they could get that 5th-year option on him because they wanted to have him. I think what's going to happen is they'll have him 4 years. They'll franchise him once. Maybe they'll franchise him twice. We'll see. Yeah. And then I think he's gone.
Yeah, I mean, what is this? Year 3. So he's 23, 24. So he has one more year on the contract, 24. So the Jets could keep him. The Jets have him under control going into his year 20 and into his age 26 year, right? Now, we all know that running backs fall off the cliff at about 27. 27 to 28 is this. So who's to say, and again, it pains me to say because, like I said, he's probably my favorite Jet. But who's to say you just don't beat the brakes off of the kid and run him into the ground? He's already got one ACL. So like it or not, he's damaged goods. You got a running back that has had an injury to that wheel. It's damaged goods. And they just ride it out and they'll pay him straight through up into his age 26 year. And guess what? You'll still have a 23-year-old Braylon Allen. You'll still have a 24-year-old or 23-year-old Isaiah Davis, 23-year-old Braylon Allen, 24-year-old Isaiah Davis. to go to. And like you said, Joe Douglas kind of shows, to me at least, in the years that he's been here, where he likes to appropriate his money, and it's not the running back room. You know,
I mean,
it's not
that's
the
where
running
he
back.
drafted.
It's not the running back room, and it's not the safety room, right?
I mean, which at least, I mean, look, I've been a big Joe Douglas critic. I've been critical of Saleh. I've been critical of Douglas. People know that I'm maybe perhaps too much. But one thing I would say is he got the positions right. In terms of what he will and what, like, he doesn't invest really in linebackers either. He drafts them in the later rounds, doesn't really. I mean, again, he generally goes for the most important positions, and he's right about this. As much, again, it's painful to admit, but ultimately statistics show that the biggest predictor of how many yards a running back is going to gain on any play is the blocking at the point of attack. Like, you could change the name of the guy on the back of the jersey and it barely matters. And so it's just, and again, it's hard to see that because you see a guy make such a dynamic play, but on a down in, down out basis, ultimately between the wear and tear, the sudden drop off, and just the fungibility, just how interchangeable they are. I just don't see how you can pay a running back in this day and age. Like, I think the Eagles are going to regret paying Saquon Barkley, to be honest.
Yeah, but is that contract, is that really him getting paid? What, I mean, the whole thing, what is it?
I didn't check it out.
I think it's like 3 for 20, 3 for 21 when it's all said and done, like what they're committed to before they can get out. So if that's the case, I don't know.
He has $26 million guaranteed.
Okay. And he's gotten out at year 3 or after year 3, right?
Yeah. I mean, they have void years on his deal too. It looks like, hold on one second. I have a little, even though the salary cap is my thing, I have a little bit of a hard time with the option bonuses, trying to figure out what's guaranteed and what isn't. So yeah, it looks like it's about, again, like 3 years, but it's really 20, it's 2 years with 26. But even that, I mean, again, it could be that you're saying this roster is so good where we can afford to splurge on a running back. It could be that they're just saying that, but I'm not as high on Saquon as other people are. I've always been a bit of a Saquon critic.
You're paying him. They're paying him kind of big money, shorter term for an older running back. So that get it. Listen, Philadelphia. I think Howie Roseman is doing something, a little bit different, because I believe Jalen starts getting paid now, and they keep spending money, and they keep, they keep paying. I mean, I think they just re-upped Devontae.
Yes,
Devonta Smith and AJ Brown and Saquon they brought in, and they're paying Jalen Hurts.
Actually, his cap number this year is 13.6. Jalen Hurts. So, and it's 21 next year, and it goes to 31 in 2026.
Yeah. So
his cap hits are still reasonable for quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's fair. That is reasonable. Yeah, 13 or 13, and even 21 is reasonable. I mean, that's that's middle of the barrel. So maybe that's why they're saying, okay, we're okay spend a little bit more in this 2 years on Saquon to have him, and then we'll get out of it after that. But they're also kicking a lot of money down the road. A lot of Howie Roseman is synonymous for the void years and all his big contracts and so on and so forth. So either he knows something that the rest of the league hasn't caught up with, or is starting to catch up with, or we just most teams do it ass backwards. But Howie Roseman, man, he can build a team. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
He can build a team.
Yeah. So I guess moving on, we talked a little bit about Tippmann, but the rest of the offensive line. I wanted to ask you about John Simpson and what you expect from him. What have you seen from him? I don't know if you looked at his tape or you had any thoughts about him. People think he's the weakest link on the Jets offensive line, which seems fair. But how weak do you think that link is?
No, I don't. Well, I think that's fair. That he's the weakest link. Like, listen, when it comes down to it, it's hard to have superstars at every single position, right? And we know, when healthy, we got a really good one in left tackle, right? When healthy, big question mark. We think we got a really good one at right guard, right? When healthy, I think we all think that we got a good one at right tackle. He's not, better than average.
Mm-hmm.
And we think we got a good one at the center position if he can figure out how to snap. So, if he's the weakest link on that bunch, I'd probably say, yeah. So I did watch a lot of his film. I think that there's going to, if I had to say on the negative is, I think that we're going to probably see a little bit of, and some people hover off the PFS stats. I think you're going to see a little bit of negative, or kind of him getting worse a little bit in some of the pass protection numbers. We know what he can do as a run blocker. He does it very well in the pin and pulls and the traps and the kickouts and stuff like that. I think he does a really good job. He's very powerful. I think we're going to see a little bit of regression in what he does in his pass sets. I think he was a little bit lucky last year. It also helped being next to Tyler Linderbaum, who's a very above average in pass protection himself. So I think that could be a little bit of a struggle. Listen, the guy's physical. He's got strong hips, tree trunks for legs. He can anchor down very well. I think he gets a little bit sloppy. I think he gets a little bit grabby. I think you're going to see a lot of that. He cleaned a lot of that up last year. I mean, early on in his career, I think it was even worse than it was last year. But yeah, listen, he's 26 years old. He kind of had a renaissance since he went over to Baltimore and kind of found himself and really grew. And sometimes I guess it just takes longer for other people, for some people to get the whole hang of it. But I think it's fair to say that he's our weakest link. I also think it's fair to say that we can expect, average play. I don't know if he's an all-pro. I don't know if he's going to be all-pro caliber, but you're going to see some, highlight level, plays from him that involve John Simpson. Like, he's a nasty mofo, Rivka, at times, Yeah, like I said, I'm expecting a little bit of regression in some of his numbers in terms of the pass sets, and hopefully, especially with Tyron, maybe it'll help with Tyron Smith there. It also could hurt him because you could see a lot of the games up front that people are going to play to get away from Tyron and kind of, take the edges and twist them inside, so on and so forth. So that's what would concern him, because I think that's seems to be when he gets a little bit too handsy and a little bit too grabby. But yeah, listen, I'm fine with John Simpson as my fifth as my left guard, as my fifth starter.
Yeah,
fifth best on the line, I should say.
The truth is, John Simpson wasn't really on my radar when they initially with free agency, because I was like, the guy's a gap blocker and we play a zone. When they signed him and then they traded for Morgan Moses, that kind of pretty clearly signaled that they were going the other way with it. So then I'm like, look, you paid John Simpson and you got him for $6 million per year. I'd rather that than paying Robert Hunt $20 million per year when he had to block for all of 2 seconds when in Miami.
Yeah, it's listen, and that's another thing I think that goes understated. Rivka, that's a good point. Is that's a bargain. A starting lineman brought in free agency for $6 million is a bargain. I mean, it's not like basement bargain where you find some guy for veterans minimum and he ends up being a stud. But this is a guy you went out and you kind of went after, targeted in that frame, and for him to come in and be an adequate starter at that number, that's really good. I think, at least.
Absolutely, I think. And the other thing is that forgot what I was just going to say. I was going to say something as you were finishing off, but I forgot. Okay, let's get to some of the comments, because people always complain that when I do my live streams, I don't. It's like that one disappeared.
Nope.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, you're good. Okay, yeah. So when I do my live streams, people sometimes complain that I don't get to the comments. So why is it even a live stream? So hey, Connor. So wait, Connor said hi to Joe. Howdy. Hey, Todd. Thanks so much for joining. Let's see. I think if Rodgers isn't confident, Tippmann is done sailing snaps high by week 1. Tippmann won't be the center week 1. Hope he fixes it by then, though. He's a pretty good player already. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we touched on that. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think it's something that it needs to get righted. It'll right itself when it does. But if Verge Tibbs can give me a suggestion that he has, because I don't see one on the roster.
People keep thinking Connor McGovern. Now, if you watch Connor McGovern last year, he was awful. But he's also not he's a zone blocker, not a.
Yeah, I was gonna say, with this change in philosophy, I mean, there's probably no one that might be worse. Now, if you said Connor Williams, is he still available? Coming back.
He is, but he's
got that
coming off
knee.
the ACL, and he
Yeah.
tore it December 12th. So I can't imagine he would be ready to start the season.
Yeah. So
so there's that. The other thing is we should just mention is that Rodgers has spoken very highly of Tippmann multiple times. If you watch his press conferences, he talked about Corey Linsley, and he said Tippmann has a chance to become that. He even when they asked him about him calling out Tippmann, he said, "Look, Joe's a very laid back guy. He's fine when I'm reaming him out. We still do a bro hug every day before practice. Like, Rodgers seems to think that he could be a good player, and so yes, the snapping is an issue, but I think that Rodgers still recognizes that overall he's the best player for the team.
Yeah. I just don't see. I don't see anything resolving itself in terms of replacing him before week 1. I just don't think that's an option. I think Tippmann's our center. Through the good snaps and the bad snaps.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully he could get it to a point where it's not going over Rodgers' head. Like if it's a little bit inaccurate, like you could live with it. But if it's going over his head like it did in the scrimmage, that's an issue.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so he said, Benjamin, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Anthony McFarland.
Yeah, we talked about those 3 running backs that they worked out.
Yeah, so Harlan Abraham said, "Howdy, Rivka and Dom C." Hi, Harlan. Thanks so much for joining. Let's see. Blewett's the best at player evaluations. I would tend to agree, being a Jets X Factor person. Yeah, no, Blewett, when you're talking about individual player breakdown, minute details is no one better. That's
right. I would agree with you, Rivka.
Yeah. Then there's, aren't we way overacting through this Tippmann stuff? He will be okay if not sign McGovern, problem solved. Well, we just talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kickoff returns are going to be fun. The onside kick stink. Yeah, they do. I mean, remember surprise onside kicks?
Yeah, they're a thing. So what I don't understand, I know that the new rule says that you have to announce it when you want to try an onside kick. You can only do it if you're behind.
And you're only in the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter, and you have to announce it. But does that mean you go back to the old formation?
Presumably, I mean, because otherwise, how is anyone supposed? I mean,
yeah.
I guess how does that work? You kick it right at your team, and I don't know. I guess presumably you go back to the old formation. Yeah. That would be very strange. But either way, I mean, I just miss. They changed so many of the rules that the onside kick is only recovered about 5% of the time. It used to be a little bit more, and it's frustrating. Although my husband, who's not really a football fan, so this is how it works with my husband. I taught him the rules of football, and then every year I tell him, "Oh, they changed this rule, they changed that rule." So then he asks me about different rules. Why don't they change that one? So he's like, so he said, like, why should there be an onside kick altogether? Why should you even have a chance to get the ball again if you kicked it? And I said, my answer to that is, well, the rule on kickoffs, at least when the rule used to be that if it wasn't downed, it was live, which meant that the kicking team could recover it. So if that's the case, it made sense that you could onside kick.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Because if the ball is live, if it's not down. So the point is that once they changed the rule and said if it drops in the end zone, it's a touchback. But even so, if it's kicked in the field of play, it's still live. Mm-hmm. So that's why an onside kick makes sense. But my husband was like, no, why should you have another chance if you're following? I disagree. Yeah. Okay. Well, we have Adam here, New York Sports Wicker Media. You could check.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam. I don't know if he's still here, but thanks so much for joining. And Adam said hi to Harlan. So let's see. We have JETS. Thank you. Let's see. They should give Izzy a shot at kick return. He could do pretty well with it, I feel. What's up, Dom C and Rivka and Green fam? Hope everyone's doing well. Let's go Jets. What do you think about Izzy as a kick returner?
So he did it. He did it in college. I'm actually, like, if this isn't like the most condemning sign for Izzy Banacanda's, like, shaky at best roster spot, is that he hasn't gotten any run as a kick returner. They're using him more on the kickoff and the kick return than they are as a returner. I mean, listen, maybe he got a raw deal last year. I mean, a young kid coming in, coming out of college was a big play waiting to happen. Not a fit for our new offensive scheme. Maybe he fits the outside zone where he can plant and get vertical real quick, and shoot through that hole very well. Not a guy that's going to grind him out between the tackles. I mean, had one of the more putrid, He's one of the more putrid runners coming out of college in terms of contact balance. He went down on the first hit like so quick, so often. So I don't know where his niche is going to fall in this offense per se. And I thought maybe that, that's it. Maybe it'd be on the kick returns, but they're not even having back there. I don't know, man. He's an enigma to me. I mean, listen, you got to remember, nothing but a 5th round pick, and those are just dart throws. I think the name Izzy Abanikanda might be better than the player Izzy Abanikanda in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, we all love him because we all knew who he was, but maybe he's just still not there, and he could be one of those guys that gets cut and goes like we brought in Eno Benjamin and Keyshawn Vaughn, also 2 young backs, in the same kind of mold, like kind of undersized, never really found their niche in an offense. Izzy Abanikanda could, be one of those guys taking camp trips over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about Abanikanda is after Xavier Gipson fumbled last year on a kick return, they put him in a couple of times, and he fumbled himself. He had 2 returns, and he fumbled one of them.
Yeah.
And so he just, I think the Jets just kind of saw him. Like, I don't know really why they took him exactly. And I guess the outside zone, but he couldn't block. He couldn't catch. He couldn't break tackles. And he's a fumble liability in all aspects of his game. So, like, what does he – if you're not running outside zone, what does he bring you?
Well, I think the idea – and again, maybe it's a faulty plan, but that outside zone, I'm guessing that they were planning to have somebody with the speed element that they were losing in Breece Hall, knowing he's coming back from the ACL, and they were probably going to ease him back. And maybe they thought that they could catch lightning in a bottle with Izzy Abanikanda on those, that one series every 5 where, he finds a seam and he gets north and breaks it, but yet I'm assuming they thought the same in the Dalvin Cook signing, which I'll stand here. I was one of the few that was all for it, because
you weren't one of the few. You were one of the many. Everyone was pro it except Michael Nania, and to a lesser extent me. I mean, I wasn't pro it either, but Michael was very vocal about it. And he got absolutely destroyed for it. Yeah,
the concept completely made sense, but I guess the juice wasn't worth the squeeze when you come to. And again, you get to that 27 age 27, age 28 year, a lot of tread on the tires, and it just running backs, it just falls off a cliff real quick. I mean, and where's Dalvin now? Nowhere, right?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and the thing is, I think that what made Jets fans so mad ultimately was how much money they gave him and how bad he was. Like, if you signed him for $3-4 million and then he stunk, be like, okay, and that was the thing. When he was signed, I was furious. And Robbie Sabo kept saying to me, he was like, look, Rodgers took a pay cut. This is what Rodgers wanted. I said, still, you don't sign him for $7 million when no one else is going to sign him for $7 million. You sign him for $4 million. Like, and that's kind of was my thought process. Like, you're giving him a few $1 million. Okay, I didn't think he was going to be good, but I'm like, I could stomach it for hopefully the 1 or 2 times where he breaks one. Kind of like what you're saying with Izzy. Is that what they thought with Dalvin Cook? That was my thought process. But for $7 million, like, that was just whatever. It's gone and done with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sunken cost.
I don't like to waste my breath on that anymore. Okay, so we have Tippmann should be snapping the ball 500 times after practice every day. I'm sure he works on it. I mean, he's a hardworking type of kid.
He and for the times I've been at camp, he's one of the first ones out there. He is taking some extra reps. I'm sure he's doing it after practice too. Listen, man, like I said, I think we as Jets fans and the social media world are taking this probably to a level that it doesn't need to get taken to. So yeah, I'm sure he's working it, and I'm sure it's going to work out.
It's also because it's Rodgers. No, like, I mean, the narratives around Rodgers are just so insane. Like, I feel like everything to do with Rodgers becomes like a whole story and a circus in and of itself. Like Rodgers yelling at Garrett Wilson. Oh, like, you think Peyton Manning didn't yell at his wide receivers during practice? You think Tom Brady didn't yell? We saw it on the sideline all the time. But it's Aaron Rodgers, so all of a sudden this is a major issue.
Yeah. He's the bad guy. Everyone wants him to be. He's the villain in everyone. In all the media's eyes, he is the villain. So it's going to happen.
I mean, it's actually unbelievable. And I'll be honest, did not love Rodgers from way before anyone in the media had a circus with him. I thought he was kind of arrogant. It was just, always my impression. And that's what kind of people like who cover him say. But the amount of like vitriol towards him is just like a whole different level.
Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
What other like athlete like gets that amount of hate without like getting arrested for like assaulting someone? You know what I mean? Like, okay, if a guy gets arrested for domestic violence or for assaulting someone, fine, they deserve what they get. But like a guy who's just quirky and doesn't give the media what they want and can be kind of standoffish like that. I get that he has a very controversial stance on the vaccine, but ultimately, does he like? We're a few years post that. Can we just like get over it?
Yeah, and and he plays football. He doesn't write policy or like do anything like that. Again, this is the world we live in, especially in the world of social media. That we're all diving into and committed to, man.
Yep. So let's see. Then Cameron said hi.
What's up, Cameron?
So Dano is saying he's laying low until the Tippmann and Reddick talk is over. We haven't said a word about Reddick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny when I wrote my preseason, my training camp things, I talked about the storylines. I wrote one to ignore, and I wrote Haason Reddick should be the one to ignore because I said, okay, he holds out. He has to play because if he wants that contract, he sits out even like for the whole year. No one's gonna give him the deal he wants. Come at 30 years old, coming off having sat out, like. Yeah. People already learned from Le'Veon Bell that it's not a good idea to do that anyway, but also he's going to be 30. He has to play. Yeah,
and I don't know, does his contract, and I don't know, this is a general question that I'm asking, what happens to the contract? Does it toll if he doesn't come in and play, or does it kind of repeat itself? Does he stay on the same contract? Or is contract
I think Le'Veon Bell's did, right? It because he became a free agent ultimately.
Yeah, but I think that year of
but that was a franchise tag that he didn't sign. Was that what it was?
I don't remember Le'Veon.
I don't remember. I don't know. It's an interesting point because if his contract doesn't even toll, then he's going to get it stuck in that place all over again. I mean, ultimately, I think what has to happen is the Jets have to guarantee at least most of his contract, give him a couple incentives, maybe give him $1 million or $2 million more just for good faith. But the thing is, they won't negotiate with him until he comes, and he won't come till he has that new deal. So you're at a stalemate. Yeah.
And it's gonna that I'm even more so confident than the Tippmann fixing his snap stuff that's going to resolve itself. This might just be like, hey, listen, like you said, they're in discussion, but it's just going to wait a little bit. He's going to work his way back into camp and be ready to go. I'll be willing to bet on the side that he plays week 1 San Francisco. He'll be in camp.
Absolutely. That's what I think. And that's why I said, just don't pay attention to it. Look, I'm not concerned about it at all. Now Peter says hi from Mongolia. Peter, that's a very dedicated.
Mongolia, holy.
Yeah. So he said, "What do you expect from old McDonald?" So I'll throw it to you because there has been some talk in the media about him not gaining weight, and he said he wanted to gain weight, and then this whole thing. So what do you think?
So I think Will McDonald's really talented. I think he's a really, really talented player. I think it goes, he's because he might be, long and lanky and I guess ideally, from the norm, a little bit underweight, that you want your defensive end to be. I think he's a really underrated run defender. I think he plays the run really, really well. I'm not necessarily concerned that he's, didn't get to 250 if that's where they wanted him. And sometimes, especially for a guy who relies on, his bendiness and his quickness, sometimes extra weight could be a detriment. So I'm not necessarily concerned with that. And I also don't understand the media attention that he's not getting reps, because I don't necessarily think that's true. Like, I've seen him get tons and tons of reps. Is he the starting defensive end next to JJ on when the ones go off all the time? No, he's not. They've been playing Michael Clemens there. Do I think that that'll be the case in the season? No, I think that there'll be some. I think that'll be Haason Reddick's spot. You know what I mean? So I don't think Will McDonald's kind of being overlooked or is, completely third team or something like that. Like, I think he's going to fill a role. He's going to get plenty of playing time. I'm not necessarily concerned about his weight. as long as he comes in and shows that he can be the effective defender against the run that he has. He does it he does it under the radar. But he's very good against the run. He's not JFM good, but he's very good.
So it's interesting you say that, because this is the thing. People, like, I've been watching every one of Saleh's press conferences and most of the player press conferences in full, because what the media reports and what he actually says are two completely different things.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable what people pick out of press conferences. So I was watching, and I wrote an article about this actually. When people asked him about McDonald and asked him about him gaining weight, he said he's about the same, but then they asked him, will he play the Bryce Huff role? And he said, I wouldn't cap it at that, because McDonald does a very good job with leverage against the run, which is exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
The thing about McDonald's, that he might be 240 or whatever, but he's very strong. The bigger question, and this is what Saleh said, the reason he's getting second team reps is because he needs to show that he has a bull rush. He said what Saleh said is he needs to show the man in front of him that he can run through it. That's not a matter of, but what people misunderstand is that that's not a matter of gaining weight. That's a matter of learning the technique.
Correct. And again, you gotta take his whole senior year and kind of ball it up and throw it, because he spent most of the time playing 4-eye, so he was inside. Now, again, in a 3-man front with him at 4-eye, that he had run fit responsibility, and he did it pretty well. You know what I mean? And kudos to the Jets and Saleh and the scouts there for really seeing what his skill set and kind of envisioning what it could be if he was, placed out wide and wide 9 or so on and so forth. Like, that bendiness that he has around the edge, that pliability, that ability to just dip and rip is really, really good. Now, I agree, he might be a little bit of a one-trick pony right now in terms of his pass rush, his pass rush bag. It's a lot of, it's a lot of dip and rip. It's a lot, that spin that, he's come to, everyone's come to know and love. And you don't see a lot of, you don't see a lot of speed to power. You don't see a lot of the straight arm. You want to see that develop. And that's where I'm getting from like what you said and what Saleh said as well, is like, he just needs to develop that a little more. That I think that's more of a, if you want to use the word concern, I think that's more of a concern in him really becoming a more nuanced all-around pass rusher than it is of him being 235 pounds. He can't play the run, because I think he does a good job on that, And again, he uses his skill set to affect the run game too, by shooting gaps and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the way I see McDonald too. The other thing about McDonald's is, I mean, look, people always forget Haason Reddick is 6'1" and 240 pounds. So I'm sick and tired of hearing, like, the Reddick is going to be starting in base. I'm sick and tired of hearing, like, oh, McDonald is too skinny. I'm like, yeah, okay, he's taller, so in that sense he's leaner, because Reddick is shorter, so it's stockier on him. But, like, I mean, look, I know this is a very different guy, because he doesn't usually play hand in the dirt. But Micah Parsons is 6'3" and 245, and he's strong as heck, and he can bull rush, and it's because of his technique. I mean, he's obviously also a physical freak, but the thing is that he has his hand usage. He's a dominant bull rush. He can bull rush, edge rush, tackles at 245. Why? Because he's stronger, but also because he has good technique.
Yeah,
like, so that's
similar.
What he has to learn.
And similar, and I'm not comparing the two, but like you see a lot of that same skill set that Micah Parsons offers in JJ. And I love the fact that they're talking about kind of playing JJ a little bit more all over the formation, a little bit at the apex, kind of, mugged up in the gaps and so on and so forth. Think about it. If we play with leads, like you would hope an Aaron Rodgers led offense does, and you got down in distance and you got a lead, you got a team that's behind and needs to throw the ball. What are you going to do when you have, Haason Reddick on one side, you have Will McDonald on the other side, you have Quinn in the middle, and then you have JJ roaming all over. Where are you going to place the extra attention? Where are you going to place the double team? You figure it's got to be at Johnson, right? I mean, at Quinn and Williams. And then you're going to leave these guys on an island. Like, I'll take my chances with Haason Reddick and Will McDonald coming off the edge, and JJ floating around, doing wherever, playing the games up front, and lots of stunts and twists and stuff like that. Like that that's the aspect of the Jets defense that we haven't even really scratched the surface on yet, because we've been so used to playing from behind and just, trying to stop the running backs and get the ball back, so on and so forth. We haven't seen the full capabilities of this team playing with the lead and just pinning our ears back and getting at it, man.
I mean, which is why they drafted McDonald. I mean, they said they anticipated playing with more leads, and they wanted him to just be able to pin his ears back.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, he said, I don't know why, but the more Rodgers talks, the more I like him. I just wanted to comment on that because I've written a couple of articles. Again, I'm sorry that I keep referencing my articles because I'm not trying to tell you to go read them, but I'm saying more that this is just something I've written in case people read it and say like, oh, you're repeating yourself. So I've written both of Rodgers' press conferences so far this training camp. I've written articles about and kind of, elaborated on. And one thing I noticed is, like Saleh, Rodgers says a whole bunch of stuff, almost a 20-minute press conference, and the media harps on literally one sentence that he said, and that becomes the whole narrative. And it's like, did you even listen to that press conference? He said so many interesting things. Like even what I said about Brees, his full comment was that the other day, and he said the previous day in a walkthrough, he had made a check on a new play they installed, and he said Brees pointed to the right tackle and and basically told him what to do, and he was like, and he looked at Brees and he's like, oh, that was really cool. I was like, who else is telling you that their running back made a check in the walkthrough? Like, but Rodgers really tells you that when he was talking in the first practice, they had asked him, he had talked to Malachi Corley and to Garrett about a couple of things. And he explained, he's like, Garrett's so quick, but sometimes, he does a little too much in his route running. And I asked him, why didn't you just speed cut? And he said with Corley, he's like, if you have I forgot exactly what it was, but like if you're running a certain route with inside leverage, like you can't cut that too flat. If this happened in a game, I would need you to take it much more vertical. And so he said, if you're running a vertical against an outside, I think a vertical and you have inside leverage, like you have to run it straight up field. You can't take it so flat. And so it's like, again, that's the level of detail you won't get from anywhere else. And so even I might have whatever you think about Rodgers personally, like at least appreciate what the guy does on like his, not just what he does on the football field, but how he's coaching up other players.
Yep. He's, he is, and I believe this more and more watching him and seeing him kind of take control and lead our offense. Like, again, this is a testament to maybe how bad Hackett is, but like Rodgers is the OC. You know what I mean? Hackett might, help with the install and so on and so forth. But, Rodgers is really calling the shots. What Rodgers wants, Rodgers is going to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of scary because, like, oh my God, like, yeah, you got a better backup quarterback, but still, it's like, I mean, but I guess you could say if Rodgers goes down, they're not winning the Super Bowl. I think that's fair enough. Like, even if they make the playoffs, because Tyrod is a pretty decent backup.
Yeah.
So I guess that's fair. But yeah, he definitely is the OC. Now, Harlan says, if Reddick doesn't want to play, then let him sit out. It's his career. If he wants a shorter career, it's on him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but I mean, I think it's suffice to say that the Jets are a better team with Haason Reddick playing than not.
I mean, look, I think the Jets would be in trouble if Reddick is not. I mean, certainly we've won. They're playing the 49ers. It's the toughest game of the year. But to me, more than anything else, I would say it a little bit differently. I wouldn't say it so much as like, oh, if Reddick doesn't want to play, then let him sit out. The way I would say it is, I believe that Joe Douglas should hold firm and not give in to his contract.
Yeah, listen, but I understand the player, trying to maximize. He's completely, completely underpaid, and maybe that, like the whole, second round, third round tag that's on with Reddick, that it becomes a second rounder if he plays more than 66%. Maybe he came in and he wasn't expecting that, and then they trade JFM, right? And now he's like, well. He's like, they're obviously going to run me. They're obviously going to, give me the run. So they better pay me for what. So I don't necessarily knock a player for trying to get as much as he can when he can get it. And what it is you got two sides here, and they're just going to have to meet in the middle. They will. I'm not necessarily concerned about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing about Reddick is, so I agree 100% with what you said, where when they traded for him, so, and this could even be as much like people say, oh, there was miscommunication. It could very well be that Reddick was resigned to what he was going to be with because they had JFM. And then when they traded JFM, he's like, wait, suddenly I have leverage because I'm your starter. You're starting edge rusher. Like before that, he was kind of like, I don't know how many snaps is he even going to get. Now, in the Jets defense, the reason they put it at 67.5% is because JJ played the most, and he played 66% last year.
Yeah.
And so the assumption is that he's not going to play more than that. That's why they put it at that number. But even so, even if he plays 67 or close to 67, when he would have played 55 before that, he saw it as, now I have some leverage. Now you have to pay me because I'm playing more. The only thing that I think people were ripping on the Jets for not dealing with the contract situation before, but I think that they're misreading it a little bit. The way I saw the situation with people were like, how could you not? Of course you trade for Reddick to pay him. I was like, no, that's not what happened. The Jets had to let Bryce Huff go. It seemed to me like he never really gave the Jets much of a chance, or kind of, you heard Vic Fangio said that he's not a 3-down player yet, Bryce Huff. So it could just be the Jets were like, we're not paying you to be a 2-down player, or to really be a 1-down player. I mean, to be a 3rd-down player. And they needed another edge rusher to maximize their pass rush. And they saw a guy who was disgruntled, had 1 year left on his contract, who the Eagles were trying to salary dump. They said, let's get the guy for below market value. We'll get a very good edge rusher. We'll keep him for 1 year, which is basically our timeline. And then he'll go.
And when he goes, you get, the pick that you lose in 26, even if it's a third, you got to figure you're going to get a third, at worst, maybe a fourth back in comp pick. So, you're spending $14.5 million for a swap of a 3rd and a 4th round pick. It's, that to me in a year where you could utilize his skill set, to me, that's a no brainer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I actually wanted to ask you a question about this, though. Obviously Reddick has had at least 11 sacks in 4 straight seasons, which is an uncommon thing, and he's good. But do you see sacks as the be-all and end-all of, let's say, of pass rushing? Or let's say, how would you value pressure versus sacks? Because Bryce Huff obviously had 10 sacks last year, but on a down-by-down basis, he was much more of a pressure guy than a sack guy, right? Like, he shorter arms kind of would affect the quarterback, didn't necessarily sack the quarterback. Reddick isn't as consistent with his pressure, but he gets sacked. So how would you value the two?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because, when the Jets paid money and brought in Carl Lawson as a free agent, he was known. I mean, he was the king of pressures, but he couldn't just get home, right?
And short arms.
Yeah. And to me, I thought that, I guess I would lean towards pressures being, just as good as the sack, because again, if you get pressure, you're going to get a quarterback. You're going to cause him to, you're going to cause havoc in the backfield. Maybe he steps up or, doesn't have the time to get through his progression, so on and so forth. And when you have an attacking front like the Jets have that can get at you and press the pocket vertically through the middle, like with Quinnen or now in Kinlaw and or JJ, wherever he's lined up, like you get a quarter, if you're bringing pressure from the outside and you get a quarterback to step up, he might just step up right into the arms of a Kinlaw or a Quinnen Williams, so on and so forth. So right now, as we're constituted, everyone likes a sack and the sack, ultimately is that could stop drives or that could end drives, so on and so forth. But I think the pressure is just as important. And maybe they're confident enough in the rest of the defenders that they have there that now they say, okay, we need that one guy. We need the, we need the one guy that can, the finisher, exactly. And that's what
that's really the way I saw it. But I just think in that sense, Reddick might be slightly overrated because even though he is that finisher, he doesn't produce pressure as consistently as some of the elite pass rushers in the NFL. Like, I mean, you talk about a Myles Garrett, a TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, some of these, Micah Parsons. I mean, these guys are at the top of not just at the top of the sack leaderboards, but they're at the top of the pressure leaderboards every season. Yeah,
so, I don't know if and although I think Reddick is very good, I think he's some people will say he's at the elite status. I don't know if he's elite. Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, the kid from Cleveland's elite. TJ Watt's elite. I don't know if I'm putting Reddick in that same tier or that same class.
No, I'm not either. But that's the thing. Like all this media thing saying the Jets should pay him $25 million. I'm like, he's not worth it at $25 million. He's not good enough at $25 million. Like honestly, if you're giving him $25 million, I know I can't entirely say this, but I'd rather see Will McDonald start. Like if you just can't build a team that way where you're paying a guy so much more than he's worth. I mean, again, you could say maybe he's worth, like, given the market, maybe he should get closer to 20, but definitely not 25 to 28.
Yeah, I agree. Especially and not long term either.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why the Jets brought him in, is because they said for the 1 year.
Yeah.
And they've even said as much, because they told him, basically it came out in the media that they told him to get paid here or elsewhere, you need to play this year.
Yep.
They telegraphed what they were thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have Aaron now. He said, good seeing you both. Thanks so much for joining, Aaron. So he says he's going to the joint practice this week. What's one thing or player you keep your eye on? I'll let you start.
Let's see. We're playing Washington. Well, I'd like to see. Again, I think I'd like to see how our offensive unit, if in whole, holds up. This will be probably the first week that all five are practicing in live situation. So I think that'll be important. Can they kind of gel? I mean, Christ, 30 days, right? Something like that until the first game or close to it. So I think that's going to be the one thing that's most important, is how those five guys gel. In regards to other players to keep an eye on, like, I still think right now, I still think that fifth wide receiver spot is the area that we're going to have to keep our eye on. I guess maybe, even at a lesser point or lesser extent, is what they're doing in the defensive backfield. Like, is JBC making the roster a real thing? Because you can make I think you can make the argument to keep 6 cornerbacks, but where's that player coming from? Are you only keeping 5 receivers? Are you only keeping 4 linebackers? Does JBC work himself into a spot where, you don't want to expose him to, you don't want to expose him to waivers, and you don't want to put him on the practice squad. You want to, does he earn his stripes? Because I think, as long as Eccles gets healthy from that rib injury he has, I mean, I think it's safe to say, that Sawson Reed, Michael Carter, and Eccles and Quantez Stiggers are going to be on the field. Do you keep a sixth? Do you keep a sixth cornerback? If you do, which one of them is the backup nickel? If any of them, right? Because I would think that, right now, I think probably the backup nickel would be Tony Adams.
I thought it was Isaiah Al, because he played in and out, but they moved him to safety.
Yeah, they did move him to safety. I know he played in and out. I guess you can argue Isaiah Al. I mean, Tony Adams was Tony Adams played the slot. Yeah, he played the slot. He played in the slot in college. A lot last year. Yeah. He played in the slot a lot last year. He played it in college, so he's got that skill set. But Saleh keeps talking up his his leadership and how he's really stepped up his game. I just don't know. And I'm a very big supporter and big fan of Tony Adams. I loved him, coming out of college in Illinois. But I just don't know if playing free safety, if you even want to call it free safety in our defense, if you're playing that that single high or that overhang, that too deep, if that's really his forte, like, he might be best suited up in the box and so on and so forth, in those nickel situations, even like a big nickel situation, you know what I mean?
So they actually played him, I was surprised to see that, because I thought he was going to be the free safety, but if you look at Pro Football Focus and just how they broke it down, he played about 42% of his snaps deep last year. He played about, if I recall correctly, it was like 25% or more in the slot, and then he played a nice percentage in the box too. So he was kind of like, they kept him closer to the line of scrimmage, which meant they were playing Jordan Whitehead deep, which I didn't like. But I mean, but they did the same thing with Chuck Clark, where he's more of a box safety, but they're using him probably more as the deep guy.
Well, and I think the idea of the traditional free safety, strong safety thing is kind of worked itself out. Like, now you need guys that can be. Yeah, it can be movable chess pieces in just the way they run defense. Listen, I mean, the Jets run so much quarters, right? And I don't know how much if you're running, cover 0, cover 1, and you're man across or something like that, yeah, Tony Adams is probably going to be better than a Chuck Clark. Coming up and playing in the slot or manning up a tight end or so on and so forth. But that's not just the Jets' forte, right? That's not what they have to do. So I think that versatility piece comes into play a little bit more. I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm expecting to see. I'm expecting to see multiple safeties. Not only rotate in, but maybe we could see a lot of situation where we have 3 safeties on the field. Maybe
they
Chuck
did it last year too.
Yeah, maybe Chuck plays a little bit more of that hybrid linebacker. I think he's probably better suited there than playing, single high.
My problem is that I still don't like Ashton Davis playing single high. I know he's fast, but he played in the box last year, and that's really where he belongs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Maybe they see it in Isaiah Davis or Isaiah Oliver, not Isaiah Davis, Isaiah Oliver.
I mean, it's hard for me to see that, how you could take a guy in one off season and turn them into a quality safety, but maybe I'm wrong. We haven't actually seen him do it yet.
Yeah.
But just speaking of JBC, I see him as not making the roster just because I just can't see where he would come from. But the one thing I would say is if they don't carry a fullback and they only carry 3 tight ends, potentially I could see, because Salah said the other day that they usually carry 5 or 6 linebackers. So let's say they carry 5. I assume that the odd man out there, I assume that you would have Surratt and Zaire Barnes making the roster. The reason I think Barnes will make the roster is because they didn't want to expose him last year as a 6th-round pick. So I think they like him. So then Sam McGovern would be the one to go.
Yeah.
But then if you have 5 linebackers, you have no fullback, and you have 3 tight ends instead of 4, you can carry that 6th cornerback. And they did. I mean, certainly 2 years ago, everyone thought they were going to cut Bryce Hall, and they carried it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, especially.
Yeah, I could see him.
What they say about it.
I could see them carrying him, but him being inactive. That could be the route for him. I just don't know. Again, the guy's just getting healthy, and granted, it's practice, and granted, it's against 2s and 3s, but you see him making plays, which is a benefit now that they focused in on, because last year. It was, is he a cornerback? Is he a safety? We're going to kind of juggle him around, see where he's bit. They thought he was going to be a safety, and now they're kind of resigned to the fact that he was a cornerback. And in college, he played both. I thought his college film was better as a safety than it was as an outside cornerback. But, listen, I mean, again, people adjust and people grow and people change, and maybe they see his fit in this defense better at, playing the boundary. Again, it doesn't fix. To me, it's a scary situation with Michael Carter and his injury, if that, albeit minor, but if something bigger were to happen to him, like, the Jets are in a tough spot, man. They don't have,
but I hate it. Eccles doesn't really play the slot well.
No, I don't think so either. Now I've heard a lot of grumblings that people, that Eccles is on the chopping block for some people. I don't necessarily see that.
Well, it's probably because of the what happened with him just personally.
Oh, with the speeding thing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that people just don't like him for that reason, and so they're kind of.
I could see a situation, and I've talked about this. I talked about this on my show on Thursday. Eccles got a lot of run and has been getting a lot of run in special team practices as the gunner. I could see him being the full-time gunner and maybe them cutting ties with Irv Charles. That wouldn't surprise me as much as it would if JBC didn't make the final 53.
I just don't think Eccles is nearly as good of a gunner as Irv Charles.
Yeah. Well, they've had Eccles and Quantez Stiggers taking mad reps as gunners.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And, well, my primary concern with Stiggers is that tackling is an issue. And so I don't know if you want a guy who can't tackle as your gunner.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point.
I mean, we'll see what happens. Look, they carried Charles. I see Charles as the Justin Hardy, meaning Hardy was the specials only player. So to me, I thought they were going to carry Charles because they always carried Hardy. But maybe not. Maybe they'll see it as too valuable a spot to too valuable a roster spot, and we'll just carry either another receiver or carry someone else. We'll see. Yeah. But to answer this question about if you're going to go to the joint practice, I'm not going to answer only one. I want to hear about who did the kick returning and how they do. That's just I'm very interested in. I don't know if they do kick returning in these joint practices, right?
They might do some specials situations. I mean, obviously in the game, they will. I don't know how much they'll rep it live during the
Okay, so then
joint
if they
practices.
don't, then scratch that. I want to see.
They could. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much they'll go live with it or not.
Yeah. So the way I see it, I know it's very hard. It's very hard to evaluate offensive line play at a joint practice. It's very hard to evaluate Trent's play altogether. If you could keep an eye on how Javon Kinlaw's doing or how the interior run defense is doing, that's something I'm concerned about. So if you see how people running up the middle on the Jets, that would be a concern for me. Lazard on the offense, I want to see how he's doing. Is he catching the ball? How's his chemistry with Rodgers? Because to me, I think we're going to see more of him than we would like to. And, I want to know what's going on. Is he back? Is he motivated? Are his hands back to as bad as they were in Green Bay, as opposed to as bad as they were last year? Because they were bad in Green Bay. They were, unplayable last year. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a rejuvenated and a more energized and a more focused Alan Lazard. Again, the good thing is, Rivka, is we saw the absolute worst. It couldn't get any worse, right? So any improvement is going to be, markedly better. But it just falls back to the thing, like there's still that connection. He still has the connection with Rodgers. He still, understands and knows what Rodgers wants, so on and so forth. So especially with Mike Williams down, Xavier Gipson not practicing, like he's going to get reps. Whether like it or not, I'd just like to see him, continue to catch the ball in tough spaces. Like, give me something, and he has. Every practice he's been pretty good. He had, I know one of the practices I was at, he had, 2 consecutive drops, with one of them, which was just like, the ball was right here. I mean, it was picture perfect, and he just tried to turn and get vertical too quick, and so on and so forth. That's like the concentration stuff that we saw all too often last year. That's the stuff that you want to see improve. But whether we like it or not, like Alan Lazard's going to be on the field.
So the thing is, earlier when in OTAs and earlier in training camp, when we heard that Gipson was playing as the starting slot, I was like, oh, maybe he'll be the starting slot week 1. What I think is going to happen is you have Mike Williams, obviously, as one of your starters outside, and Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard alternating between outside and the slot.
Yeah. I think that's going to be and I wouldn't rule out the idea of them running more 12 or 22 12. Even. Yeah, more 12, more 22. I don't know even if it's a split, with split backs, dual halfbacks, because I don't know who they're not carrying a fullback, it seems, unless Anthony Ferguson makes the team and plays that H-back or whatnot. They haven't given many reps.
Even Lincoln Septic.
Yeah, not really. A good story. I don't believe in him. So yeah, so that'll be interesting. But I think you might see a little bit more a little bit of heavier personnel at times, and like you said, there's going to be plenty of formations where we see you see Lazard and Mike Williams on the outside as the X and as the X and the Z, and then you see Garrett in the slot. That hasn't been shown a lot in practice, but I could see that happen a lot, and to me, I think that's going to be super beneficial.
and then Garrett in the slot is lethal.
Yeah. And then you got to remember also, for as bad as he is, if Lazard does anything that we can say in a positive fashion, he affects the run game pretty good. He's a pretty good blocker, so you have him, you have him in the slot, sometimes big slot, and he's going to help the run game a little bit. He's going to help seal off. He's going to help get in the screen game. And in the screen game. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have that. Now we have Taylor. Thank you. I'm pretty sure you were talking about when I was talking about. I don't know if you were talking when I was talking about Rodgers, but yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, Jets. I live in Chicago. No. I'm not a Bears fan or a Giant fan or a Charger fan or a Cowboys fan. Not a fan. So you're saying you're not a fan of any team? Because then he says the Jets in week 1 they played the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara Levi Stadium. I cannot wait to see that game. Well, it should be a good one on a national stage. Just praying that Rodgers doesn't get hurt. Like, I'm okay. Honestly, I'm okay with losing that game as long as Rodgers doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, amen.
Because the way I see it is, like, I don't see them winning that game. I just think it's possible, but I feel like I would have preferred to play them a little later in the season.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. I would have liked to play them a little bit later in the season as well, but I think any game in the NFL is winnable. I think any team can beat any NFL team on any given day. But I mean, the odds are stacked against you when you're a good team, and the Jets are a good team. And you're playing probably a team that's as good, if not better, than you on paper. First game of the year in their home stadium, where some of their strengths
Exactly. That's why I don't
some of
think
your, like matchup wise, it's not the best matchup for the Jets. Like,
Mhm.
For the stuff that Christian McCaffrey can do out of the backfield for oh my God, why can't it? George Kittle, we've always, I mean, as long as I can remember, we've struggled against, covering the tight ends, and runners out and running backs out of the backfield. And I mean, those are what
Although
those
not
guys
having
do.
Jordan Whitehead should help tight ends because he gave up 5 touchdowns to them last year.
Yeah. So the interesting part, in which I think, forget about the players paper on paper. I mean, I just think that when it comes to schematically and the coaches, we are at such a disadvantage, facing Saleh over Shanahan.
I mean, yes, although I would argue that I don't know if it's as big of an advantage of Ulbrich and Shanahan. Meaning, I think Ulbrich is a pretty good defensive coordinator, and he's calling the plays. As people think this is Saleh's defense. CJ Mosley actually said the other day, he's like, "Nah, Saleh's an offensive coach now." Saleh said no, but as much as it's Saleh's scheme, Ulbrich is the one calling the plays, and so I feel like Ulbrich will do a good job. The problem is that the way the Jets scheme is set up, again, they switched to a gap scheme because they know that their defense doesn't do as well against gap schemes. Well, guess who switched to a gap scheme first?
Yep.
And so the only thing I would say is that the 49ers defense is set up somewhat similarly to the Jets. So it could be that their new scheme and with Brees will be a bad matchup for them too.
Yeah, listen, I will say this. I mean, Trent Williams is what he is. He's arguably the best offensive line. Yeah, the rest of their line is not really up to snuff. Colt McKivitz on the right side.
Thanks.
He's pretty bad. Jake Brendel, who's the guy the Jets were interested in bringing in at the center, he struggled. He struggled last year mightily. So they got some holes. They got some holes that play advantageously to our defense. I'm just, like I said, I'm more concerned about the McCaffrey out of the backfield stuff and the Kittle.
Debo too. Debo on those.
Yeah, but even more so, like the Kittle scares me. Tight ends always scare me. Against the Jets, like
and the running back and the tight end. Yeah,
that's it. We just don't do a good job of around those. Let's see if they have Trent Williams in camp. Let's see if they come to a resolution on what they're doing with Brandon Ayuk. That could change some of the some of the mojo, if you will. If you don't have Brandon Ayuk out there, then you can, figure out a way to, pay a little bit more mind to the middle of the field. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. No, I ultimately don't see the Jets winning that game. I guess I say I hope Rodgers stays healthy and I hope they don't get blown out because that would be embarrassing on national TV.
They set it up for a reason, right?
Yep.
It's a win-win for national TV, right? If the Jets get blown out, it's like, oh, hey, it's Aaron Rodgers. And if they win, it's hey, look, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. So he says the Jets are going to be good in the AFC. They might meet with the Chargers in the AFC Championship game. That maybe let me know. It's funny. If you watch national media kind of talk, no one gives the Jets, or almost no one. I shouldn't say. There are individuals at ESPN, Mike Clay. There's who ranked the Jets roster the second best in the NFL. Said I think he said they're going to win the. I don't remember exactly what he said. They're going to win the division, win the AFC, whatever he said. There are a couple other ones, but most people are almost not counting them as a playoff team.
Well, I'll tell you this much to Rick Diaz's comment here. I don't know about the Chargers as a playoff team.
Yeah. Well, especially since Herbert has that plantar fasciitis. I mean, that's a nagging injury. That's a bad injury.
Well, they're going down in droves over there. They just lost.
Also.
They lost McCaffrey, who's already hurt. Quentin Johnson, who had a bad rookie season, but he's hurt.
Nice.
Bosa went down too. So, they're dealing with some stuff over there. On top of the fact that I just don't think their roster is ready to compete right now. They're gonna take a year or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, one thing I would say, draft Lad McConkey in fantasy if you can, because he's their only receiver.
for a team that probably is not going to throw the ball nearly as much as we.
It's true.
Like,
it's true, but still, he's literally their only one.
Yeah.
So I'm still. I mean, I'm not saying draft him in the first round, but if you can nab him in a later round, he's definitely. I think he'll just get a lot of catches, like in a PPR.
He's made of glass, man. His injury history and that red flag is real. Soft tissues, lower extremities, ankles and feet and stuff like that.
I hear that because I liked him as a prospect a lot. He was like my guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Harlan said Reddick might seem underpaid, but those under contract came after his son's. Well, he's underpaid relative to what the market is now. You always say, Tyreek Hill just got paid again because he's underpaid. He was underpaid relative to the market. Now you can understand why he wants more money. It makes sense.
Yep.
Let's see. I know Rick put in like a ton of comments. So let's see. I'm a little confused. Is Reddick risking the chance of not getting paid at all this year, or would he get it guaranteed? Like, how does that work? No, if he's not here, he doesn't get paid.
Correct.
And his money's not even guaranteed, but even if it was guaranteed, if he's not here, if he doesn't report to the games, you get a game check, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't, yeah. Rick said good night. Calvin, I appreciate it. Calvin asks, is Rucker taking any snaps at fullback? I don't think so, right?
He is not. He is not lined up there. And I think the idea that, they cut what's his face. Who is our fullback that they just cut? I can't think of his name. Bawden, yeah. And brought in Ferkser, who, primarily is a fullback H-back. Whether he makes the team or he's just camp body, I don't know. The fact that we haven't seen Rucker taking any of those snaps. Listen, Rucker's, his role is kind of set. I mean, he's your inline backup tight end. He's your tight end too. And, I don't see him taking fullback snaps. I think that's, that's something that I think the Jet fan, especially the ones from the East Coast and the hometown hero and Rucker, want to see more than probably what he can expend. Listen, past couple of years, Rucker is he's a strong blocker. But there's been times where he just absolutely whiffs and stuff. And a lot of it's when he's moving, stuff like that. I just don't see where the transition to him being an H-back is. You put him on the line, you put him, in a phone booth, and he'll do a job. In space, not so much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Jets fans tend to overrate him as a blocker in general. Now, speaking of, because we mentioned the tight end position, I wonder what you think. NFL.com listed the Jets tight end position as one of the top 10 roster holes in the entire NFL. And ESPN, Aaron Schatz, when he wrote for ESPN Plus, he wrote the biggest roster weakness in every team, and he listed tight end for the Jets. And I think the idea is that people think Conklin's a nobody, Rucker's a jag, and they don't have anyone else. I don't know. What do you think about, is tight end the biggest weakness on the Jets? What do you think of Tyler Conklin? And do you think that this is one of the top 10 roster weaknesses in the NFL?
Well, it's hard to say that the second part of what you said, like Rucker just might be a jag. And that might
Most
be
tight
just,
end two are jag.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why he's tight end too, and he's still young and developing, and so on and so forth. So that just might is what he might be, and which is that is what it is. Conklin, I think, is interesting. I don't think Conklin, he's not in George Kittle, Travis Kelce standard, but I think he's a guy that kind of flies under the radar. I think he'll do much better with obviously Aaron Rodgers at the helm, and with the line now intact, because it's going to open up the running game, and with that in turn is going to open up the play action stuff. You know what I mean? I'm a fan of Tyler Conklin. Listen, if you get 60 receptions out of Tyler Conklin for 650 yards and a handful of touchdowns, like, is that a bad player? I don't think so.
That's top 10 tight end play in the league. Like that's the thing. I'm like, yeah, he's not the vertical threat that a guy like Kelsey would be, or a Sam Laporta, or one of these dynamic. That was one of the reasons that I was not a huge Brock Bowers fan, because I said just positional value. Said they're perfectly fine with Tyler Conklin. Like I think he's a slight. You could say he's somewhere in the 10, anywhere between 10 and 15 as a tight end, depending on where you rank certain guys. To me, that's for a tight end. That's fine. Like I don't see what all the hate is about. I think it's just because Conklin, what has happened to him a lot is he's just taking checkdowns on 3rd and 25 because he comes in and chips, and then they've been throwing. They're not going to have to do that as much, and so he'll be more efficient.
Listen, the group as a whole, is it one of the weaker positional groups on the Jets? Yes, but that's what happens when you have a pretty good roster, right? When you have a pretty good deep roster. I mean, you can argue the safety room might be worse than the tight end room.
That's what I think, and interior defensive line minus Clinton. Yeah.
But I mean, think about safety and listen. When it comes down to it, follow the franchise tags, right? Which positional groups don't get paid the most? Running backs, safeties, and tight ends, right? So it does. Not a lot of teams are going to spend tons and tons of big money. I shouldn't say that, because obviously there's very high paid tight ends, there's very high paid safeties, and very high paid running backs, but they're less and less of those, right? Because you can make those are positional groups that obviously are just not overly valued. Like you can get by with average, you can get by with league average, you can get by as a 15th, 16th best tight end in the league and still affect the offense in a good way. And that's just what I think of Tyler Conklin. Again, he's not in the Kittle Kelsey realm, but he sure as hell better than Smythe in Miami, or the Smythe Jonnu Smith combination that they have there, and so on and so forth. There's probably 5 or 6 tight end rooms which I would take the Jets over, and thinking off the top of my head. So is it the 10 worst in the league? No. Is it the worst positional group on the team? That's arguable. That's arguable. It depends how much you love Tony Adams and Chuck Clark. That's what it comes down to.
It's interesting. Do you think, because Schatz, the other thing he said to me, I had him on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he thinks Ruckert hasn't panned out as a 3rd-round pick. Do you agree with that? Do you think that, because it seemed to me like they didn't take him necessarily to be like, I think that they knew what they were getting.
Yeah, I mean, think about when they took him. They took him with they took him the year that they signed Conklin and Uzomah, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea was he was young, and again, remember, even at Ohio State, he was a 4th option. He was never really a force in the pass game. He was a converted wide receiver who had to learn. Tight end is the hardest position to transition from the college game to the pros, because there's so much more that's asked of you. So yeah, they took him in the 3rd round, but I think people take, and it's not only with 3rd round, like I think the concept of the idea that because somebody goes in day 1 or day 2, that they have to automatically come in and be starters, and that's just not the case. You know what I mean? I think they took him as a developmental guy. They obviously liked him and they liked the skill set, but they took him when they just signed Conklin and Uzomah both to 3-year deals. So the idea is you're going to sit and learn, and then you're going to take over when these guys are over. And what's to say that doesn't happen exactly as they envisioned it, right? So I think
to an extent, he could have even taken over for Uzomah. That's the thing. He could have been, and Uzomah was the tight end too, who barely got any playing time as a receiver. But they signed him, they overpaid him, but they signed him for what he was. And if Ruckert becomes nothing more than that, I don't see it as they wasted a 3rd-round pick, or he didn't turn out to be what they expected.
Listen, we might not see the true Jeremy Ruckert until next year, right? Mm-hmm. If Conklin's on the team and he's given an opportunity to kind of seize the number 1 role, maybe that's when he takes a step up. I mean, look what happened with the kid in Cleveland, David Njoku. They thought he was a 10th or 16th overall pick, and it took him 4 years to develop. When he finally got a grasp of that starting job, he developed and took off.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of tight ends like that.
Yeah.
So now this is a question. What's the drop-off from Quentin Jefferson to Javon Kinlaw? And I'll just add to that, what's the drop-off from Al Woods to Lecky Bozo?
So I'm going to say this. I'm here for all the Javon Kinlaw rebirth. I really, really expect him. Let me preface by saying this. Not only is it Kinlaw, not only is it Quentin Jefferson, but whomever the Jets bring in to play next to Quinnen Williams has had exceptional career years, right? Who's the guy that went to the Texans 2 years ago?
Rankins.
Yeah, Sheldon Rankins went and got himself paid, right? Got a 10-year or $10 million contract. Now he signed with Cincinnati for another one, so on and so forth, but less money. Whoever comes in and plays next to Quinnen Williams is always good. Quentin Jefferson was pretty much just a jag, right? He had a good season last year. They different scheme. He was able to kind of let loose and get at the passer and attack a little bit more. And it paid off. He had a nice season. He had 6, 7 sacks, something along those lines. 5, 6, 7 sacks. I don't know if he really was a dominant force or he was just kind of living off of the rest of the defensive line being good. I see that same thing and then some for Javon Kinlaw. Again, film shows what it was. He really hasn't lived up to the bill when he was in San Francisco. But I'll tell you this much. There's something to be said. I know that he absolutely chose to come play for White Cotton and Sala again. Like there's a connection there. He's definitely in much better shape, and more so, he's healthy. All the knee problems and stuff like that he dealt with for all those years seems to finally be past him. He had a good season last year. I expect that good season to continue, and him to grow and now being placed in that spot next to Quinnen Williams. Like, I think I'm here for the Javon Kinlaw rebirth. So I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off, if any, from Quentin Jefferson. Again, and then from Al Woods to Lecky Fotu, you can expect the same thing. 15 plays a game? Again, you're getting Lecky Fotu, who was asked the 2 gap as a true nose guard, and you're giving him a little bit less responsibility and a little bit more opportunity to play aggressive and play physically. And so far, again, it's only practice, and it's, so far it's been showing pretty well, right? I thought that he was pretty solid, in Arizona. I thought he was pretty solid at the point of attack, standing up and holding the run. I think he'll be as good, if not better, in those limited snaps that he gets, more so than Al Woods. Again, I think Al Woods was a good name. Everyone knew Al Woods. Everyone knew the name Al Woods. The product was exactly what you get out of a 37, 38-year-old guy. I think we can expect similar production from, and more so, more importantly, similar snap count from Lecky Fotu. But I'm here for the Javon Kinlaw stuff. I'm a believer.
Okay. I'm a little bit more skeptical.
Yeah,
but
I know,
we'll
and
see.
that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah. He said they had Eccles playing the slot this week with Carter out. Yeah, that's what they did last year, and so Carter missed a game or two. And although there was one against Miami, they put Sauce in the slot at times, and it wasn't a great idea.
No.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Sauce. Is as good of a boundary cornerback as there is in the NFL. Why are you going to mess with that?
Well, they did it because Carter was out, so they kind of shifted him into the slot at times.
Yeah, but you got to remember that people got to realize how important it is for the slot cornerback, how important they are in the run fits as well, because they're in the box and they're playing, and that's not Sauce's forte.
No.
And that's not Stigger's forte either. And maybe Eccles is a better tackler than those two, but is that really saying much? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, what happened to Ole learning both tackle spots? I mean, the Jets said he was. They said they were sticking him at left tackle.
Yeah. Listen, there's clearly been an about face on the whole, multifaceted functionality amongst players from the solid regime years past to this year. This year they seem to be playing their guys at their spots. Listen, God forbid, if Morgan Moses goes down, even though he hasn't played it, I would suspect in season you'll see Olu Fashanu at right tackle more so over.
So?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I know that they're prepping him and playing him in left tackle now, and they're not giving him any reps on the right side. But I would see in a vacuum that they could go that route if it was in season, just because an Olafashinu who hasn't played right tackle since his freshman year in college is probably still better than Max Mitchell, or Carter Warren. Like, again, I was a fan of Carter Warren coming out of college, as a developmental project, and he still has a lot of developmental in him to do. So, if you're asking me right now for a short term 2-3 games, who do I want to start at right tackle? I'm going to take Olu Fashanu, who hasn't played right tackle since freshman year of college.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's say I think they'll put in 3 safeties when Mike Carter's out. Problem is you can't play 3 safeties all the time. You don't want to play 3 safeties when the other team is in 11%.
Yeah, unless, like I said, like we talked about briefly, you Tony Adams, because that becomes that quasi slot guy, and then yes, you'll have 3 safeties by position, but he's still playing the slot there.
Yeah, Chuck Clark is no stranger to 3 safety. Yeah, but he's usually the sub linebacker guy.
Correct.
And that's what the Ravens did with him when they drafted Kyle Hamilton, I believe. Right, he was the 3rd safety, unless they put Hamilton in the box and put Clark. But I think they had him in the box.
Hamilton played a little bit of all over. Hamilton played a lot of star, which is that overhang, kind of that sub linebacker / nickel back, kind of what Brian Branch did last year for Detroit. So yeah, but I'm sure Baltimore it was a little bit more interchangeable. I think they also had Geno Stone back there, who was more so,
Yeah.
So anyhow.
Yeah, but you since you brought up, you've mentioned Brian Branch. This reminded me, we're talking about the slot. So I had, you were on when I had Cody Alexander on, and I felt like he was not as high on Michael Carter as the rest of us are, at least as Jets fans are. Like, he said he has him projected as the corner 27 for the coming season, and he said there's a whole bunch of young nickels who are better than Carter. Obviously, you don't watch film around the league like most of us don't, but I mean, to me, it's like, you have Carter, you have Teron Johnson, you have McDuffie, and you have Mike Hilton from Cincinnati. I mean,
the kid from Indianapolis is good as
Kenny
well.
Moore. Okay,
Kenny Moore, that's his name. Yeah,
but I don't see one as like, Johnson and McDuffie got the All Pros because Carter is chronically underrated. Although actually, Aaron Schatz voted for Carter for All Pro.
Did he?
Yeah, he has his All Pro vote. He put it out on the site, and he actually voted for Carter. I think, again, he said statistically Carter finished as his 5th overall corner, meaning based on the metrics that they have, the 5th in the NFL, not the 5th nickel, the 5th overall corner in the NFL. And so, I mean, to me, I feel like that was a bit slanderous of Michael Carter.
Listen, I'll say this much. I absolutely love the stuff that Cody does, and I respect him, and he might just see him, in a different light. And I don't think we're saying that with like green goggles, because I think, you and I in particular are able to be a little bit more objective. I think Michael Carter's very good. There's people around the league that I, I go to and I trust implicitly, and they also think Michael Carter's pretty good. So, 27th overall corner. That might be a little bit low. I think, like I said, that's fine. Let him fly under the radar, stay underrated. Maybe it'll cost us less to keep him.
This is the thing. I don't really understand. Rich Cimini said they haven't had any conversations yet. If they don't pay Michael Carter now, they're dumb.
Teron Johnson just set the marker for the slots, right, at $11 million a year. You bring him in for 3 for 30, guarantee 21 of it, and call it a day, man.
I don't get why they're not doing that. I mean, they seem to have, based on what DJ Reed said, he seems to know that he's probably not coming back next year. But then at least lock down Carter. So you have to replace Reed, but you have your nickel.
Maybe they have. Listen, I don't know, and this is not anything said with any knowledge. This is just me, probably overthinking. But maybe they're just thinking way too much about the the Sauce and Garrett extensions and the AVT extension. Where in their eyes, Michael Carter's fourth in the pecking order.
I do hear that, but he is the one who needs to get. He's the one who's going to.
And again, if that's the case, and this is the one gripe that I have with Joe Douglas, right? If that's the case, that's fine. If you're saying, listen, we have Sauce, we have to extend Sauce and Garrett early, and we have to pay AVT, and then we're going to have Brees and JJ and whatever. However they figure it out, we're going to have to pay a quarterback at some point because Aaron's not going to be here forever. So if Michael Carter is low on the pecking order in terms of getting an extension, that's fine. I might not agree with it, but that's fine. But then where's the preparation? Why wasn't there a slot corner addressed early in this draft so you can have somebody in the pipeline? Again, good teams lose good players sometimes, right? That's the case. But the good teams always have a pipeline guy there ready to go. You look at Baltimore. Would you say Baltimore is a good organization?
One of the best.
Okay. Have you looked and not don't do it now, but when we're off, go to Our Lads or something like that and look at their offensive line depth right now. Their offensive line has starters. They have Ronnie Staley, who's been a mainstay there, and that's fine. He's at left tackle, and he's going to be there probably another year or two. But then the other four guys, they have starters now, have come out of the last three drafts. They weren't the starters to begin with. Morgan Moses and John Simpsons and those types of Ben Bredsons and all those guys were there, but they prepared it so that when they had to lose those guys or they had to move those guys to get more capital or, they cut their losses maybe a year early so that they didn't have to pay a year late. They have the young guys ready to step in and produce and play. I mean, it is.
Voorhees was the biggest steal because he tore his ACL. And the
Voorhees. Oh man, don't get me wrong. I mean,
that was such a Ravens. When I saw they drafted him, I said I knew the Ravens were going to get it.
Yeah, but I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's forward thinking. If Joe Douglas says that Michael Carter's fourth or fifth on the pecking order for extensions of importance in his mind, considering that they only have this much money, like, that's fine. I don't agree with it, but that's fine. But where's the depth? Where's the guy that's learning that can be ready to step in once he moves on?
No, absolutely.
That's what pisses me off about Joe Douglas. We talked about it with the wide receivers before.
Yeah.
We talked about the wide receivers before. Mike Williams, great. I love the idea of Mike Williams. It's a 1-year deal. It's for 1 year, right? Now you bring in Malachi Corley, great, nice young player, but he's not the Mike Williams replacement. What if you don't sign Garrett? What if Garrett just it becomes the top 5 receiver in the league and draws his line in the sand and says, Aaron's gone, fuck this, I'm gone too. Then what are you doing? You're scrambling. Don't scramble. Prepare. Build depth. Mm-hmm. That's my rant. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I 100% agree. I said, look, I have been very critical of Joe Douglas many times. So for many different decisions he's made. So yeah, that's my thing. Yeah. Joe said, apparently I pocket deleted a message. Sorry to whoever that was. So if anyone saw their message not come up, you could post it again. June said, Dom, see my guy.
What's up, June?
Okay, so he said Sauce more likely to catch a ball this year than Lazard at this rate. I mean, Sauce dropped every one of his interceptions opportunities last year, so Lazard actually caught more balls than him. But
That's fair.
Yeah. So yes, how reliable is Mike Williams? What do you think?
We don't know yet. The best ability is what? Availability, and he's not available yet, right? And I know he'll be here for the beginning of the year. It's going to be a slow ramp up with him, so we'll see. I mean, listen. I know, obviously, San Francisco is a tough game. I think Tennessee is going to be better than people expect. They're one of the teams that I think are going to outkick the coverage, if you will. No one's giving them the time of day. I think they're going to be a tough battle. They're new coach in there has got them going.
They have holes on their offensive line, though. I know they rebuilt some of the left side, but the right side still has a lot left to be desired. And it depends if you believe in Levis.
Yeah, I do. I believe in Levis, and I believe in what they have from the center to the left. I mean, Skoronski and Latham were two of my favorite prospects that I've ever scouted. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think they brought it. They got weapons. They're going to be a good team. You know what I mean? They're going to be a good team. So, I don't expect Mike Williams to be full go by then either. You know what I mean? So the first quarter of the season, we don't know what Mike Williams is going to be. I don't know how reliable he is because he's not on the field.
I hear that. I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but not based on anything tangible.
Yeah.
Kinlaw is about to eat with 7 or more sacks. Q commands 2 guys every single snap, and Kinlaw's weight and him being healthy is going to help him a lot. That's basically what we said before.
I did.
Now, Nolan said, LOL, Ole can only play left tackle, which you kind of said, yes, but also if he has to play right tackle, he's going to play right.
Yeah.
Maybe Becton will puke his way out of Philly and we get him for depth.
I don't.
Ship has sailed.
Yeah, I think all parties involved are happy to part with that one,
including Jets fans.
I think for definitely for Jets fans and the coaches, but even for Becton, I mean, he was in here and how many times did he say, "I am a left tackle," and he goes there, he's like, "Oh yeah, you want to play right guard? No problem, I'm there." Hey, anything, football's fun again. Anything you need from me, It'll
be fun until he absolutely stinks. Because honestly, I am not convinced that Mekhi Becton is ever going to be a good player at this point. I think the knee injuries just killed him.
Yeah, I agree on that.
So what did Alex say? That he said, "Don't mention that even in jest." I didn't see what Alex said. Maybe that's the one that deleted by mistake. So Verge, again, dude, relax. This coaching staff has shown you they can develop players, but it's best secondary in the NFL, and you're complaining about a lack of an elite backup nickel. He wasn't complaining about a lack of an elite backup nickel. He was complaining about the lack of a backup nickel altogether. And it was two separate things. I think he was responding to what you said earlier about who's going to play in the slot if Carter goes down, not the content of who the next. If you're responding to the thing about, if he's responding to the thing about having someone in the wings for Carter, I mean, I'll let you respond to that, but I think that's a very
no. I listen. That's fine. I'm not afraid of our defensive coach as constituted developing guys. They've shown they can do it on the defensive side of the ball. All right, but I also think it's fair to say who is there right now to develop at the slot. And if Michael Carter's not going to be a priority to keep, well then, damn, now we're going to have to find somebody, whether it's a stopgap and then draft somebody to develop them instead of having somebody in here already that could be learning, that could be taken, that could be getting crucial reps right now while Michael Carter's out, so that if he is not an option, you have your backup piece right there. That's just smart team building 101 in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now we reached the end of the comments. I wanted to ask you one last question before we go off, because I saw you tweeted this. You said this is just about a quarterback contract. You said, if you are somehow outraged by the Tua and Love contracts, remember, don't hate the player, hate the game. The market for good quarterbacks to be paid like elite quarterbacks has been established, and the risk of not paying them far outweighs any perceived overpay. Next up, Dak is going to get $60 million per year. So I understand that the idea that this is just the way in the NFL. Is there any way to change that? Not just at quarterback, but in general at positions where it's just the next guy up gets paid more than the previous guy, but specifically at quarterback where it's getting out of control.
I mean, listen, the more revenue that comes into the NFL and the more the cap keeps going up, the more the percentage of it being distributed amongst the 53 guys isn't going. Just the premium positions just getting paid more. That's why we're going to have $60 million quarterbacks and $30 million wide receivers and $35 million corners when Sauce signs, but we're still going to have, hell, no one wants to pay. You talked about it before, you thought it was an outrage to pay Dalvin Cook $7 million. You know what I mean? But we're going to pay Brock Purdy 60. It's crazy. But like I said, to me, I just think if you good quarterbacks get paid like elite ones, because even good quarterbacks are hard to come by. As Jet fans, we know this, right? We know this wholeheartedly. If every quarterback that we brought in was even good, we'd be probably having a different conversation here in August of 2024, right? Might be coming off of, we might be what the Buffalo Bills have been, 4-time, AFC East champs, and so on and so forth. But it's just not. It's the most important. It's the single most important position in any team sport is quarterback.
I agree, but I'm just looking it up now. Let's see what the 15th highest paid quarterback gets in terms of APY, and we're not including guys on the rookie contracts, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The 15th highest paid guy is paid $40 million per year. Do you think that an average NFL quarterback should be paid $40 million per year? Forget about Daniel Jones.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking $40 million has got to be Daniel Jones. Listen, I mean, I think that's how important the quarterback is, right? And just curious, in whatever chart you're looking at, what's the 15th highest paid left tackle?
Let me check that. Yeah, I'm on over the cap. So hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let's see, left tackle, because they have it left tackle and right tackle separately. APY. Hold on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's $7.5 million.
Yeah. Now,
and that's Ike Ekwonu.
Yeah. And is he on his rookie deal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's Ronnie Stanley, so he's not on his rookie deal. But
no, Ronnie Stanley.
I assume he's in the last year of his contract, so it could be his APY was much higher, but the last year.
So I think left tackle is probably it's probably right up there as the second most important position in football. And look at the difference in that 7.5 to 40. So that's just to go, like quarterbacks are, they're one of one and everything else is what. So, in a league where the salary cap is $240 million, $40 million of it going to an average, the league average quarterback probably makes sense. We don't have to like it. We have to take the number of 40 million out of the equation. And just understand that that's just what the going rate of a quarterback is, So, raise your sons and daughters, boys and girls, to be quarterbacks, right?
So
and not running backs.
Yeah, no. I totally hear that, but the problem is that let's say why can't there be more contracts like Geno Smith's from last? Look, Geno had every bit the year in 2022 that Jordan Love did last year, right? And I get that he's older, but Geno got a incentive-laden deal, with like he could get up to whatever, but it was basically a $25 million per year APY. And Jordan Love comes off half a great year, essentially, right? Because he really didn't play well in the first half of the year. And he gets paid like a top quarterback in the NFL. I get that he's young, but just why is there no middle ground?
Yeah. I you know what? I think who the middle ground is? And maybe he's a little bit above the middle ground. Baker. And
I was going to say Baker is 20th and he's at 33 million.
Yeah. 33 million. He's probably middle ground. And that's just, like I said, Jordan Love's, that's a tough comparison to Geno Smith because I think, like I said, Green Bay isn't paying a lot of, they got a relatively young team. They don't have an older team. They don't have a lot of money tied up there outside of Rashawn Gary, maybe a couple of guys, I'm sure. So a lot of their core is young. They're not getting paid. So maybe they thought we're willing to take the risk and bank on the lightning we have, lightning in a bottle, and that this guy will continue to develop now that he's got his shot.
What about Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. I think I'm a little bit higher on Trevor Lawrence than the majority. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in this league and deserves to get paid like one. Yeah, I know. Listen. Yeah. Like I said, I have views that differ from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, I never really understood that. I never really understood the hate.
I think his throwing motion is wonky, to be honest, and I always felt like there was going to be accuracy issues because.
Yeah, I'm expecting a big jump from him this year. Again, it's funny. We talked about Tennessee, who I think is a team that can surprise people. I also think Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville has done a lot of good things, especially on defense.
That whole division could be a lot better than people think because Indy looks pretty good too, although it hinges on Anthony Richardson, obviously.
Yeah,
but they also have some talent there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we have a couple more comments. So I really wish Reddick would just sign any updates. I mean, Salah keeps saying no, so there are no updates. Jetted out said Rivka Boord out late tonight. I'm sorry. How was that a comment on my age? Because I'm 29 years old. I'm not a kid. And in terms of if it was a comment on how late I've gone in my podcast, we've gone pretty late before. The last time I had you on, it was 2.5 hours. So I'm not, I don't know where that comment came from.
I think because we started late. I think we started at 9. Maybe
yeah, we started at 9, but last time we started at 8 and we went to like, I don't know, 10:30 or later. Fine. And it gets a little later, but it's fine. So you answered this question. You said he thinks that they would put Olu.
I think that they would put Olu at right tackle. I think that in a in-season situation, you're going to put your, if your best 5 are going to see the field, I think that's Olu at right tackle.
Okay. And there's one Go Jets fan in San Diego. I guess I don't think that guy would, unless he's saying he's a Jets fan in San Diego, because the other guy, I don't think he was a Jets fan.
Go Jets.
Okay.
Web Films.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Dom, I'll just give you a chance to plug any of your stuff. Anything you want to share?
Oh man. Listen, you can always catch me in part of the Talking Jets network. Thursday night I do a co-host a show with Green Bean. On Mondays I co-host a show with Ryan from Jets 24/7. That won't start until the season starts. So that's really what I got going on. I got a lot of other stuff. I do a lot of the draft stuff. And right now people don't, outside of me, really don't want to talk about 25 prospects. So I'll leave that be, but expect a lot more draft content coming out as the season goes on from my channel, which is Project Prospect with Dom C. But you can always catch me talking Jets with all the other stuff that I do and the other shows that I, hop in on and co-host. So.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you joining. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com. Discount code 80 for Wayne Corbett. Please remember to subscribe to the Score Boord Podcast on Spotify, Apple News, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you.